Okay, hello everybody. Happy Saturday and happy Valentine's Day to everybody. So we're going to have a long show today. Just here watching basketball games. Not much going on. Had nothing going on today. I got a lot of good stuff again. Daryl. Okay. I just talked to Kay. She'll be coming in. Hmm. Well, Daniel, happy Saturday, happy Valentine's Day to everybody. Hey, all right, I satisfaction. I get confused in saying your name. Or I satisfaction, I think. We're going to have another big show again. That's not without even having Billy Bean and all the rest of the videos. I found so much new stuff. Chico's on the couch, laying down. Hey, Paul. Yep, happy. Same to you, everybody else. Yep. We're going to have a long, good show today. Nothing else to do. Watch my sports, basketball. Kay should be in. Maria. Happy too. This would have been my mom's and stepdad's anniversary also. So it's a hard day. I think it would have been close to 40, got to be close to 40 years. A lot of big stories I want to get out again today. The first one will be Savannah's mom update, the latest update a couple hours ago. So I think I'm going to go ahead and get started and wait for get everybody else come in. If they're listening, everyone's doing the day Valentine's Day, so we'll go ahead and get started.
Let's bring in my next guest, who, along with other local news outlets, has been receiving letters allegedly coming from someone who knows the kidnapper, even the kidnapper, potentially. Let's bring in TMZ founder Harvey Levin. Harvey, boy, this gets weirder and weirder day by day. And this morning we wake up and we find out nobody's been arrested, nobody's in custody, but we had a ton of police activity just 2 miles away from Nancy Guthrie's house, potentially within this 2-mile radius that the police have been asking for doorbell dash cam video. First, give me your quick observation on where you think we are this morning. Does this feel like a letdown?
Well, it's a letdown because they haven't caught the kidnapper and they haven't found Nancy Guthrie. I was in touch with the law enforcement involved in this early this morning, and I asked them, is this in any way tied to the information that we have given the sheriff and the FBI, and I was told no. And as for what happened, it doesn't seem like they've kind of connected the dots. It was interesting. Yesterday morning, I sensed something was going on with law enforcement, that there were meetings. They have these kind of morning briefings that were going way longer. I just happened to find out about one of them, way longer than they normally did. And I figured something was up, and they were also playing everything really close to the vest. It may have been this, I don't know. What I can tell you is that the FBI is keenly interested in the ransom note that we received. And I know this to be a fact. They are keenly interested because obviously, I mean, we supplied them with it. And you can kind of connect the dots, if you will, but I am 100%.
So
they are extremely interested in this ransom note. And they're also interested in the person who has now sent us 3 emails saying in return for money, they will lead authorities to the kidnapper and Nancy.
Let's dig into that for a second, because this is fascinating. This person claims to know where she is, or at least who the kidnapper is, and is willing to pay $50,000, or is willing to receive $50,000, half of the reward first, and then half of the reward later. Have you heard from this person since we saw the activity happen overnight? Are you expecting to hear from them again?
Well, if you take him at his word, I am not expecting him because he ends his email to us. Let me just read it if I can find this part. He said that there's going to be no communication, that they are done talking. So he says, let me just find this. I apologize.
And he said that before, right?
I did say yesterday was my second and final attempt, but you upping the reward to discredit me is a lowball move. 3 strikes and you're out. So he's saying that he is not going to get back to us again, but he said that the time before and did.
Would you put up that money just to see where this goes?
I think it's really inappropriate because based on what we know, we could be interfering with law enforcement. They are not just sitting back. There's a reason that this ransom, this $6 million ransom, has not been paid, and there's a reason why the Guthrie family and or law enforcement has not paid the money. I don't know what that reason is. Personally, I'm puzzled, but it's very clear to me that they could do it if they wanted. And if we got involved in that, I think it would be highly inappropriate and could actually impede the investigation. There's something, obviously there's a lot they're not telling us, but I do know they're really interested in this. So we're just kind of following along and passing the information on. A couple of things that really stand out in this email, this last one, is that he says that if the FBI gives them the first $50,000 payment in the form of a Bitcoin, they will immediately give the name of the main individual along with his information for you to track. Interesting that he says main individual, because that suggests there's more than one person. He also talks about the fact that he feels this could impact his own freedom, which also makes it sound like he's worried they might implicate him in this kidnapping, that he's kind of close to it in some form. But he ends, and this is particularly interesting, that the main individual that he says he can lead them to, he said, be prepared to go international. Wow. So again, if this is authentic, he's got to be talking about Mexico, because where Tucson is, it's not that far from the Mexican border.
And I appreciate that you're saying if this is authentic, because you yourself, you're not sure if this is legitimate. This could be a scammer, because people are coming on TV left and right and wondering, have you become a honeypot for scammers, whether they're overseas or whether they're local? But you're telling us the FBI is taking these letters seriously.
We've gotten, other emails as well that are pretty easy to discredit. They are taking the ransom letter extremely seriously, and they are taking this letter asking for the reward in return for identifying the kidnapper. They are taking that seriously as well.
Okay. Harvey, thank you for sharing that.
Oh boy. Another episode video there. Oh, see what happens with that one. So the lady on TikTok, one of our favorites, came out just a little bit ago. So hopefully she's staying on. It's only a minute 50 though. She said something here.
I don't even know if you'll see this, being that we're being shadow banned. If you think I'm joking, Google it. Millions of people are talking about the fact that this is happening. If you are feeling down, if you are feeling like helpless, like you can't do anything, we're not helpless, guys. We're not helpless. Look at all the horrible things that the nurses and teachers and healthcare people came on here and said about MAGA, and look at them people now. They all lost their jobs. We have the power, guys. We're not out in the streets acting like a bunch of sprayed roaches, but we have the power right here on this app. So let me tell you what I'm going to ask you to do. I want you to flood your content with nothing but conservative posts. Go to your favorite creator who is a conservative and at least share 3 or 4 of their posts as soon as you can. I'm going to do the same thing for my people that I follow. Let's flood this app with nothing but conservative content. Okay, let's get it done. Also, do not watch any liberal content. Block any liberal that comes on your friend's post and comments. First of all, report them. Do them like they do us. Report them. Misinformation is the biggest way to get them. Or hate and harassment, which most of the time, if they're liberal, that doesn't matter. They can say what they want to say. Report the content, then block them. Start blocking every liberal that you see. That way, they don't get paid. If you happen to see their page, you're not going to see their page because you got them blocked. Block them, share conservative content, flood TikTok with nothing but conservative content. Okay, guys, hang in there. Don't forget, good always triumphs over evil. It doesn't matter how bad it gets. Just remember, that's what happens. Take care.
Hopefully she'll be back. So I got Elvis Presley news now, you guys. Elvis Presley.
Presley, they often imagine only the fame, the
About
glamour,
8 minutes.
the lights, the wealth. But to understand why he and his father sometimes disagreed about money, you must first step back. You must look at the soil they grew up from, the years that shaped their instincts, their wounds, and their ways of protecting the ones they loved. My Uncle Vernon was born into abject poverty. He was one of 5 siblings, raised in a household that was stretched thin long before the Great Depression made life even harder for working families. His father, Jesse, was not a steady presence. That absence placed every responsibility on my grandmother, Minnie Mae, a woman who bore the heavy burden of feeding her children, keeping them alive, and
Guys,
navigating
okay,
a
listening
world
a
that
couple of
offered her
videos
very
on
little
Elvis.
in return. Although the house she kept was terribly basic, without even the usual small comforts, it was spotless, it was dignified, and it had pride. She cared for her children with strength and
Yeah.
discipline, and that environment, though simple, shaped the character of the son she raised. Growing up in that kind of poverty leaves a mark. It forms a certain caution, a fear of slipping backwards, a sense that nothing good is ever guaranteed. When Uncle Vernon became a young man with a wife and a child of his own, he knew the sting of looking for dollars to pay rent, to put food on the table, to buy shoes before winter came. He had lived the knocks that came from simply trying to survive. So when Elvis told his father that he wanted a career in music, Uncle Vernon's reaction was shaped by all of those years of instability. He was hesitant and unsure. He had seen talented people work hard their entire lives and never make a penny from it. He understood what it meant to depend on luck, timing, and an industry that could swallow people whole. Both my Aunt Gladys and Uncle Vernon supported their only child. They adored him, but they were frightened. After losing Elvis's twin brother at birth, their bond with him grew even stronger. Gladys, in particular, became very protective, sometimes overly so, because Elvis represented their entire world. And then everything happened so fast. Elvis's rise was not gradual, it was explosive. One minute he was a truck driver in Memphis, the next he was the most talked about young singer in America. None of us were prepared. None of us
Has anybody
understood the
seen this one?
magnitude of what was coming. Very quickly, the Presley family was pushed into a world we had never even begun to imagine. A world where strangers felt entitled to
What do you
you.
guys think?
A world where private life shifted into public property. As a child in school, I remember classmates wanting to touch me simply because I was related to Elvis. I smile when I tell that story, but in truth, it was kind of frightening. Children do not understand why they're treated differently. It is a strange kind of attention, and it changes the way you see people. Uncle Vernon experienced the same shift. People were suddenly kinder, friendlier, unusually accommodating. In a way, it was lovely, but it also forced him to question what had changed. Why him? Why now? And when he looked at Elvis, the contrast was even more striking. People hung on Elvis's every word. They tried too hard to please him. They wanted something from him, even if they disguised it as affection. Uncle Vernon saw it all. He heard the conversations backstage, the whispers, the flattery, and he was uncomfortable. Part of his tension between father and son came from the difference in their upbringing and their personalities. Elvis was raised in a home of deep Christian faith. Generosity was not a performance for him. It was instinct. Tolerance and forgiveness were part of his nature. He gave freely. He helped people without being asked. He took on burdens that did not belong to him because he believed it was the right thing to do. But those same beautiful qualities could be a vulnerability. There were always people willing to take advantage, and Uncle Vernon saw this. He worried about it constantly. He questioned why Elvis should buy someone a new car or pay off their overdue bills or hand out expensive gifts. He would ask whether these individuals had Elvis's best interests at heart or whether they were using his kindness for their own gain. These conversations could turn heated. Most of our family can be very volatile, and that includes me at times. We speak with our hearts first. Elvis and Uncle Vernon were no exception. There were times when strong words were spoken, moments when Uncle Vernon would shake his head and say, "Son, these people are just using you. They are scumbags." And Elvis, with that mix of frustration and kindness, would answer, "Daddy, I can make that money back in 5 minutes." Another source of disagreement was a question every parent asked. No matter how famous their child becomes, how long will this last? In the 1950s, 60s, and 70s, nobody could have predicted the longevity of Elvis's career. Hindsight is easy. At the time, there was no guarantee that the world would still want him 5 years down the road, let alone 20. Uncle Vernon worried about Elvis's financial security, about protecting what he had earned, and most of all, about ensuring that Elvis's daughter Lisa would always be provided for. Elvis, on the other hand, believed he could always make more money. He believed in his ability to perform, to create, to earn. To him, money was a tool to uplift people. To his father, money was something fragile, something that could disappear as quickly as it came. These opposing instincts often collided. So when disagreements happened, they were not about greed. They were about fear. A father's fear, a son's generosity, a lifetime of poverty standing face to face with sudden abundance. Uncle Vernon wanted to protect Elvis. Elvis wanted to help everyone around him. Both intentions were rooted in love. But I must say, with conviction, I agree with Uncle Vernon. I have seen far too much to believe otherwise. There were many people around Elvis who were disloyal, many who took advantage of his kindness, and many who stayed for what they could get instead of who he truly was. And that is why those disagreements happened. They were real. They were human. They were born from two men who loved each other deeply, but carried different scars and different fears. And they tell us something important. They remind us that behind the legend was a family trying to navigate a world that none of them asked for, and a father trying to hold on to the boy he raised long before the world took him. Thank you for joining me today. Thank you for listening. And until next time.
But what do you guys think? Was that one all right from Elvis? I got one more. We haven't did those updates in a long time. Thanks, Joe.
It was as though the heart of the house had shifted.
Donna Presley stands at the meditation garden at Graceland, staring at the place where her uncle rests. It's quiet now, too quiet in that way that feels wrong. Because this space, this sacred ground, was never supposed to be this still. It was supposed to be alive with memory, with grief, with the kind of privacy that only family understands.
7 minutes.
But that's not what it is anymore. She remembers the first time she visited Elvis's grave after the funeral. The earth was still fresh. The flowers were everywhere, suffocating in their beauty. And she stood there with her hand on the cold stone, whispering promises she thought would last forever. Promises that the family would protect this place, that they'd keep it sacred, that no matter what happened in the world outside those gates, this one corner of Graceland would belong to Elvis and to God. That promise is broken now. And Donna can feel it in her bones every time she comes here, because what she sees isn't a resting place anymore. It's a set, a photo opportunity, a checkpoint on a tour route where strangers shuffle past with their phones out, snapping pictures of a man's grave like it's just another attraction between the car collection and the gift shop. She's watched it happen slowly over decades. The changes came in small waves, renovations, improvements, updates, each one justified with careful words about preservation and honor. But Donna knows the difference between honoring someone and commodifying them. And what's happening here, what's been building for years, finally crossed a line she can't ignore anymore. Because there's been an update, a decision, something that reached her ears through whispers and legal documents instead of family conversation. And when she heard it, when she understood what they were planning to do with Elvis's tomb, something inside her shattered. This wasn't just about moving a plaque or updating landscaping. This was about fundamentally altering what Elvis's final resting place means. And the person driving that decision, the one who's had the power to shape and reshape Graceland according to her vision, Priscilla. Donna doesn't say that name with venom. She says it with exhaustion, because this isn't the first time. It's just the latest in a long line of choices that have turned Elvis's memory into something he would barely recognize. But this time it's his grave, the one thing that should have been untouchable. Elvis feared this. She remembers him saying it years before he died. They were sitting in the kitchen late one night, and he got quiet in that way he did when something heavy was on his mind. And he said, "Donnie, I don't want to end up like some circus act. When I'm gone, I just want peace, that's all. Just let me rest." She held onto those words like scripture, because she knew what he meant. He'd spent his entire life being watched, being grabbed at, being turned into something larger than human. And all he wanted, all he ever really wanted, was the promise that in death, at least, he'd be allowed to just be. Not the king, not the legend. Just Elvis Aaron Presley returned to the God who gave him that voice. But peace doesn't generate revenue. And that's the uncomfortable truth that sits at the center of all of this. The meditation garden was supposed to be exactly what its name suggests. A place for meditation, for prayer, for quiet remembrance.
I think I better stop because I think there's that music in the background. So I'll just play that one video, Elvis. So we haven't played nothing on that in a while. Okay, we got 3 minutes on the next one.
Trying to explain and truly bring people together around issues of gender, and that's Sarah McBride, U.S. Congresswoman from the state of Delaware. You know, as a gender rights champion, and also the first openly transgender member of the United States Congress, you've been on the front lines of this fight. And you've also been on the receiving end of so many threats and attacks that come from, again, in many ways, organized efforts. So when you hear Neil talking about it from a European perspective, although he did bring us in at the end there, Sarah, how do you see it from the United States? And I want to underscore how truly effective Sarah has been in talking with her colleagues, first in the legislature, the state legislature in Delaware, now in Congress, and you have shown immense grace in the face of attacks, even from your fellow members of Congress.
Well, thank you so much for those incredibly kind words. It's an honor to be here with you, Secretary Clinton. It's an honor to be here with another trailblazer, Speaker Emerita Nancy Pelosi. And of course, it's an honor to be here with my fellow panelists. And the mayor of Boston, Michelle Wu, as well. Once politicians start naming other politicians in a room, it never stops. There is no question in the United States that after decades of historic progress on gender equality writ large, and specifically more recently on LGBTQ rights, that we are facing, as you mentioned, a well-organized, well-funded, right-wing regressive movement. And they really have placed trans people at the center of that effort, but we should be clear that the consequences of this anti-trans effort, not only out of proximity, but out of intentionality, will include consequences for women of all backgrounds. Because at the end of the day, transphobia, homophobia, misogyny, and sexism are all rooted in the same prejudice. The belief that one perception at birth should dictate who you are, how you act, what you do, who you love, and how you dress.
Less than a minute, you guys.
And it's why threats toward trans people are threats toward all women. Because when they use trans people as the tip of the spear, when they come after trans people, as they are doing right now, using us as a political wedge issue, using people like me, using me, as you mentioned, as a political pawn, not only are they licensing discrimination against trans people, they're sanctioning gender policing that we know in reality actually disproportionately targets non-transgender women.
Okay. I don't know what date that was. We got the first Q video coming up.
This. What's up, family? Welcome out of the darkness. I am Q. So one of my key principles that I try to go by, especially as I run this channel, is I never want to be the first necessarily to break something. I want to make sure I get it right. If that means that I break it and I'm the first to start talking about it, then great. but many times I'm focusing on things that aren't necessarily in the mainstream media. But the idea of getting something wrong or accidentally exposing people who ought not be exposed is a fear of mine. It's a concern of mine. I don't want to out innocent people. And I'm not saying that this channel is huge or anything like that, but even if 10, 15, 20,000 people are misled on accident, or someone is hurt by that, then I feel personally responsible. Now, that being said, when you are a congressperson, I believe that it is even more so important to ensure that things right. So this week, there was much to do about the list coming about from the DOJ. And this list, including all of these people who were associated with the infamous Epstein, and there were all types of people coming out and saying this person and that person. And so Thomas Massey and Ro Khanna came out and they said there were 6 names that were on the list. And it's unfortunate, but of the 6 names that they mentioned, 4 of those people had never even been in the same room with Jeffrey Epstein. And the DOJ had already put those people, had already taken them off their list, that they redacted those names on purpose. And so because of the fact that they were on the list, Ro Khanna decided to go ahead and out them anyway, without doing just research to make sure that those names were redacted for the right reasons. Now, there were a couple of other names that were redacted that shouldn't have been redacted. Leslie Wexner being one of them, and Ahmed bin Sulayem were 2 names that were redacted but should not have been, because they very much did have a relationship with Epstein. But again, making sure that we are not unduly hurting people by putting information out there that is categorically false is our responsibility, and Ro Khanna should be held liable for this. There was no reason for it. He could have waited and he could have made sure he got his story straight, as opposed to putting people out there and possibly hurting them. I hope that he faces a lawsuit from these men, because this should not happen. Let me know what you guys think. Comment below. I'll see you guys next time. Be blessed.
Hey, the first Q, Nara TikTok lady. I got 3 so far.
After collapse. This isn't just a meltdown. It's a sirens blaring, padded room is minutes away kind of spiral. What's pushing him over the edge? Bad ankles, red hats, and anyone who identifies as a Republican. Then over on MSNBC, Morning Joe just exploded into a fiery clash with Chicago Mayor Brandon Johnson. The cracks in the Democrat Party are widening, and now they're tearing each other apart. Plus, President Trump dropped a bombshell. He fired Federal Reserve Governor Lisa Cook. But guess what? Oh, she's refusing to quit. Grab your popcorn. Trump is living rent-free again, and the meltdown is next level. The media is having a full-blown panic attack because President Trump called in the National Guard to make Washington, D.C. safer. I mean, you'd think he'd order tanks into Whole Foods. MSNBC, they're lighting votive candles for democracy. The New York Times, they're running democracy's obituary. AOC, yeah, she's probably live streaming from her couch, whispering about authoritarianism between sips of organic oat milk. And CNN? Oh, CNN has entered a whole new realm of crazy. Apparently, restoring order is now dangerous, and enforcing the law is now considered an act of war. Watch this.
I am telling you on the front lines what is happening. And there are militarized police force going and harassing longtime law-abiding citizens of Washington, D.C. And so when we, who are probably a little more familiar with American history, perhaps than you, look at the military turning the police force on its own people, we remember the examples like Tulsa, when law enforcement dropped bombs on its own community. We know what it is like to have people.
From that, though.
We are not so far. We are not so far from that.
If you think Democrats have absolutely lost it, hit that like button for me, because she says we're not so far from Tulsa. Lady, we are like closer to Gotham City, and Trump just sent in Batman. But of course, they can't have Trump looking like a hero, even when he is the one saving the city. And when the crime data isn't on their side, these activists turned analysts just switch gears and claim the police themselves are the actual problem. Listen to how they twist themselves into knots trying to argue against their own network's reporting.
CNN's own reporting says crime is down 19% from the weeks before.
I didn't say that it wasn't down.
So is it working? Is it helping?
No,
I didn't say that it wasn't down. I'm just saying
the police
the
say it
idea
helps.
that this has never
First of all, let me
happened
just tell you,
before
a lot
is
of
not
people
the
do not
case.
care what the police think or what the police unions think. They themselves are quite problematic.
Crime's down, but the police are still the problem? Of course. So I'm guessing the left's master plan here is swapping cops for therapists, because when someone tries to steal your car, what they really need is a group session and a safe space. I mean, funny how the left is obsessed with safe spaces for their feelings, but not for your personal safety. And if that sounds like an exaggeration, here's proof they actually believe that. Governor Tim Walz.
Okay, I got two more.
24 hours after the confetti hit the floor, has already got his hands out, begging for cash to fund his transition team. Translation, you foot the bill while he rides the victory wave. So congratulations, New York City. You just got Oprah into bankruptcy. You get free buses, you get free childcare, you get free everything until the invoice lands on your doormat with a side of property tax hikes. But wait, there's more. Mamdani is not the one in power. We are getting a secret look at one of the groups who has heavy influence over Mamdani, and their opening demand for the mayor-elect: erase every trace of Israeli influence from the Big Apple. Wait until you see this list. Plus, a Charlie Kirk video has resurfaced showing Kirk exposing Mamdani for pulling a Trump-style power move. This one caught my attention. I wanted to share it with you. And Trump, he roasts Nancy Pelosi as the news breaks today of her retirement. Nobody does parting words quite like 45. Hit the like button if you're popping champagne over Pelosi's pearl-clutching exit, and subscribe so you never miss the chaos. Now, before we dive in, quick heads up on the chaos that is coming to your air travel, courtesy of the government shutdown. The FAA just announced major flight cuts starting tomorrow on Friday. So if your travel plans were already a little bit of a mess, congratulations, they just got even messier.
Breaking today, your air travel nightmares about to get a lot worse. Chaos now rocking our aviation system as the FAA prepares to slash thousands of flights at major airports nationwide. That has air traffic controllers and pilots furious with how things are going in Congress. Listen here.
There is a righteous and noble political fight happening, but it does not need to be in my cockpit. There are things happening today that will impact the Thanksgiving holiday staffing as far as pilots go. We're traveling at near the speed of sound, and the government right now is working at near the speed of molasses.
So here's the deal. The FAA is slicing 10% of flights at 40 U.S. airports. This kicks off again tomorrow on Friday with a 4% cut. Then each day we creep up with a 1% addition to those cuts until we hit 10%. Flights today, already feeling the sting. So if you're flying or picking somebody up, call your airlines first. Don't just show up and hope for the best. Fingers crossed this mess clears before Thanksgiving. At this rate, your turkey might be delayed too. I will have a little bit more on the shutdown later in the show. Now to our top story. New York, brace yourself. The socialist who promised you free buses, rent freezes, government-run grocery stores, free childcare, just hit the brakes on his entire free stuff fantasy within hours of being declared mayor. Zohran Mamdani went from power to the people to please Venmo me in record time. Hold on to your sub.
Okay, I got one more.
Faceplant of the year. This isn't just a Davos slip up. It's a full-blown global embarrassment that might have just ended any hope he had for the White House. He strolls in, tries to show off for world leaders, and somehow manages to ridicule the entire planet while apparently forgetting what planet he's even on. Honestly, he looks like he's in a different time zone, one that does not involve sobriety. Wait until you see this. And now breaking, Newsom has reportedly been denied entry into the U.S. House while in Davos. All those details are coming up. Plus, Kristi Noem, she weighs in on whether Don Lemon will actually face consequences for the stunt he pulled inside a church. Hit that like button if you think Gavin Newsom should never touch the White House, and subscribe to make sure you don't miss the day's hottest political news. Now, before we get to the video that has everyone talking, where Gavin Newsom looks like he's not exactly sober, let me show you how this whole dumpster fire started. Gavin Gaslight Newsom, he rolls into Davos, ready to lecture the world on Donald Trump and billionaires, all while hanging out with the crazy son of the foreign billionaire who jets around posting pictures of the Democrats he bought. And just yesterday, Ted Cruz, he posted a more appropriate version of this photo. Let's be real. Gavin works for Soros, and he proved it on the global stage, hitting every single Soros talking point, telling European leaders to stand up to America, fight back, and basically undermine U.S. security, all while pretending he's some kind of tough independent statesman.
And stop being complicit. It's time to stand tall and firm, have a backbone. I can't take this complicity. People rolling over. I should have brought a bunch of knee pads for all the world leaders. And I hope people understand how pathetic they look on the world stage. I mean, at least from an American perspective, it's embarrassing. Well, this is diplomacy with Donald Trump. He's a T-Rex. You mate with him or he devours you.
The guy crying about crowns? That's the same guy who quietly funded a bust of himself inside San Francisco's City Hall. So there's that. And since when is it okay for a governor to jet overseas and tell other countries to pick a fight with America? Some might call that treason. But Gavin Newsom, he claims the world leaders thanked him for that little pep talk.
You criticized world leaders when you got here, saying that some of these European leaders have capitulated to the president.
In the
and
past,
you said you should have brought knee pads. What have you heard from them since then?
A lot. I heard a surprising number say, "Glad you made those comments."
Okay, we got 3 hours today. I got some 3-minute ones here. This is the next. We'll do this one.
And by that, I mean justice is served. The maximum penalty that the law allows is applied up to and including death. IRS Form 4868 is what you need to file. Let's cut off the money supply until something is done.
What do you guys think of this
How
one?
about instead of using ICE to terrorize the population at large, how about we use them to conduct a good old-fashioned roundup? And I want to see it live, uncensored, unredacted, when they are brought in and confronted with the evidence. And frankly, I don't know who will be left to fill the congressional seats when this all goes down. But I know what, there are plenty of U.S. citizens like me who are not satanic, murdering, pedophile, cannibals, nor have any affiliation with any, who would be more than willing to step up and fill those positions. And to Pam Bondi, who said the whole system will collapse if we pursue this, I say, let it burn. And to Senator Loomis, who said she really didn't see what the big deal was with the Epstein files until now. You, ma'am, are part of the problem too. Tax Form 4868 is what you need. I provided the link here. If you don't file that, and you're a regular working class person like me, the IRS will penalize you to the extent you will never be able to get your head above water again. So file this form. In addition, it sends a message that we are done. We are done financing this system. It literally.
Well, how's that one, you guys? We got our 3-minute mask guy. I think this is a new one, I think.
They are part of the problem. They withhold the truth. They hide the scale of what is happening across the world. Ireland, Germany, France, Poland, Britain, Spain, Austria, Australia, and now even Japan and Osaka. Thousands marched through the streets demanding an end to mass immigration. This is no longer a ripple. This is a wave. The world is waking up. Western nations are demanding mass deportations. Native populations are rising. Nationalism is surging across borders. And the globalists are losing their control. Do you see a pattern yet? This is how you dismantle a civilization. Not with bombs, not with armies, but with something much simpler. Open the gates, erase the borders, invite the world in, give them food, housing, and money that your own citizens don't have. And then make resistance illegal. Call anyone who speaks out a racist, a bigot, a Nazi. That is how you silence a nation. That is how you erase sovereignty. This is the globalist blueprint. Dissolve the identity of nations, outnumber their citizens, and replace their governments with a single world order. They don't need tanks when they can use demographics. They don't need soldiers when they have policies. The invasion is silent, but it is real. They call it compassion, but listen to their own words. One man in Germany admitted it. We have more children than you. In 10 years, we will outnumber you. We will take over. That is not conspiracy. That is the plan. But now the tide is turning. America saw through it when Donald Trump secured the border in 2 weeks, exposing the lie that mass migration couldn't be stopped. Across Europe, millions are in the streets. The fight for sovereignty is no longer isolated. It is global. This is war, not of bombs, but of demographics. Not of bullets, but of policies. A war to erase you in your own land. But the people are fighting back, and once awakened, they will not go back to sleep. My friends, we are all anonymous, and maybe, just maybe, the sleeping giant of sovereign nations has awakened.
A new world order. A world where the rule of law, not the law of the jungle, governs the conduct of nations. We have a real chance at this new world order, an order in which a credible United Nations can use its peacekeeping role to fulfill the promise and vision of the UN's founder.
So, yeah, I played that again, but sorry. All right, the next one is another Georgia update. Let me know, Paul, since Flying Eagle is not in yet. It's another 4-minute.
Trump reported 29,391 votes at 9/11 local time in Bibb County, Georgia. Simultaneously, Joe Biden was reported to have 17,218 votes. Minutes later, at the next reported time update from the precinct data sources, Donald Trump is reported to have 17,218 votes, and Biden now has 29,391 votes. A clear and exact switch of vote totals between candidates. Because there is a time lag between each state recorded aggregation of county results, this type of switch can go undetected in state reporting, as long as it falls after the latest state refresh and before the next state update.
According to the Georgia Secretary of State website, Trump lost by 12,670 votes. As you saw earlier in this video, far more than that were taken from President Trump.
You guys remember this one?
An anomaly or outlier is an observation or event that deviates so much from other events that it arouses suspicions in its generation. In this, an isolation force is defined as a specialized learning algorithm for anomaly detection that works to the principle of isolating these outliers and flagging them for potential review. Remember these graphs when you meet your government officials in person. The burden of proof is on the system to prove our elections were fair, and not the people.
Okay, so here's how your vote is counted in Georgia using Fulton County's process as an example. So after you check in at a poll pad to vote on election day, you go to an ImageCast precinct terminal. After you cast your vote, a ballot image is saved on the machine. And after all the polls close, the SD cards containing all the ballot images are removed from the terminals and transported by car to, in Fulton County, one of 4 drop-off locations. Then it's transferred by police escort to the 1365 English Street warehouse. Inside of there, it is run through a tabulation software called Democracy Suite, which counts the ballots and exports the totals to a Dominion server that inserts those totals into a SQL Server database. From that point, it's directly transmitted to the CITL Election Night Reporting Server. The Election Night Reporting Server is responsible for transmitting the totals to the Secretary of State for output to their website and data aggregators like Edison, who then transmit that data to the networks.
As you just saw, there's a standard process for transferring votes by memory card from precinct to county vote aggregators. Now, let's focus specifically on this square box detailing the data entry process for county updates. The following options are available to anyone with access to these computers working in the election software: updating vote batches, rejecting vote batches, and even more notable, generating new or temporary batches that can be injected directly into the vote tally. Each of these options can then be validated and published into the system. Again, anyone working in the election software at this point has the power to manipulate large batches of votes. And all of this is before the data is even uploaded to the server.
Okay, I hope that was okay. I got not sure video, you guys. Let me know if I should play it or not. 4 minutes. 4 minutes.
He knew everybody that was very powerful.
Forcing us to sift through the most horrific crimes imaginable, searching for that one missing link that leads to the top of the food chain. It's the red one? It's the blue one. I mean, they're saying they just met the guy socially. She says she just met him socially. He just met him socially.
To be honest, like if you're not in those files, it would be an insult because it just means that you were a bit of a loser.
But we already have all the proof we need. Sometimes the best hiding place is right in front of our face. In the 1860s, when Thomas Nast first drew that cartoon of an elephant and a donkey representing the Republicans and Democrats, he was telling us this was a circus, a sideshow. We don't need to look into the Epstein files to see how the blue wires and the red wires all connect to the white and blue ones. Tad Stormer outlined in a paragraph our history of Epstein Islands. We don't have just one or two, we have hundreds, if not thousands of them. He says you can visit them, follow them online, buy their merch, read their books that celebrate their histories. They're called Mount Vernon, Monticello. America is an Epstein Island. And every election, regardless of which wire was plugged in, did that military-industrial complex shrink? Did the corporate monopolies weaken? Did a single architect of the Iraq invasion, of that torture program, ever go to prison? When they collapsed the banking system, did any of those executives ever spend a day in jail? Was a single billionaire's crimes ever exposed? We've been programmed to have a hypnotic response to colors. Why would this machine ever allow its chosen representatives to hold anyone to account? This circus is not a sideshow. It's a cage, and there's only one wire that needs to be cut, and that's the one that's connected to the back of our heads, because we're the batteries feeding it. All our tax money, our consumer spending, our credit card debt, our mortgages, our car payments, our entire lives indebted and in servitude to an Epstein class. And this machine, this iron trap, is a ticking time bomb. To shut it down, we have to stop looking inside the cage and unplug it from the back of our heads. Never use Amazon again. Never buy another Apple product. De-Google. Take as much money as you can out of the big banks. Put it into credit unions. Only support small businesses as much as possible. Start using cash as much as possible. And step by step, we can shut down this contraption that was designed in the 1700s for extraction, exploitation, and permanent war. You want to vote effectively? Replace every single person inside this machine with a human being who is completely free from corporate money, who has a vision. What's the vision? Nothing that's mainstreamed into the back of our heads by a corporate cable. The vision was the one laid out by Albert Einstein, George Orwell, Carl Sagan, Dr. King, all three branches of the religion of Abraham: Aristotle, Plato, Buddha, St. Nicholas, Mr. Rogers, and Ms. Rachel. It's not complicated. Everything in this universe is temporary. If you remember science class, you remember the second law of thermodynamics. Everything is decaying. All the money that we'll ever make, everything that we build, it's all castles made of ice that will melt. All that will remain is the content. Was it good? Did it lift us up? Did it make life better for our human family and all our children? That's all that matters.
How was that one, you guys? That was pretty good, huh? So, Lucy, that lady came out, I played at the beginning about the platform or something, so I don't know if she's going to continue or not, but it was about 2 minutes. Yeah. So the next one is that lady on YouTube finding the fraud, everything. This is 11 minutes on this one.
It's supposed to help sick people, elderly people, disabled people who can't afford care. Noble mission, right? And New York takes it seriously. They spend more on Medicaid than any state in America. Billions are flowing to people who don't even live in New York anymore. There's a home care program so broken that the governor, the actual governor, they called it the most abused program in New York history. Scammers have been running schemes for 10 years straight before anyone thought to look. And now there's a federal investigation asking a question nobody expected. Was the state itself in on it? But here's what really got me, what nobody seems to be talking about. There's a gap, a massive gap between how many people are enrolled in this program and how many actually qualify to be there. When you see that number, everything clicks. You'll understand exactly why this system isn't just struggling, it's collapsing. Stick with me. Let's get into it. So first, let's understand how big New York Medicaid actually is. This year, the program will spend $112 billion. The state's share alone is $44.7 billion. That's more than New York spends on schools, more than transportation, more than public safety. Medicaid is the single biggest line item in the budget. 7 million New Yorkers rely on it. Seniors in nursing homes, disabled adults who need home care, low-income families who can't afford insurance. These are real people who need help. But here's where it breaks down. An independent analysis found that 8.5 million people are currently enrolled. Only 5.5 million actually meet the income requirements. That means roughly 3 million people are on Medicaid who probably shouldn't be. How does that happen? Weak verification, slow audits, and a system that got flooded during the pandemic and never cleaned itself up. During COVID, the federal government told states to stop removing people from Medicaid. Made sense at the time. But when those rules ended, New York didn't catch up. They kept paying, they kept enrolling, and they stopped checking. The result? Billions going out the door with no one watching. Now let's talk about the scams. And these aren't small time. In September, the state comptroller dropped a bombshell. New York paid $2.6 billion in Medicaid premiums for people who don't live in the state. They moved to Florida. They moved to Texas. Some left the country entirely. But New York kept paying their health insurance every single month. How? The state didn't check? There's a federal system called Paris that flags when someone shows up on another state's benefits. New York didn't start using it properly until years after it was available. And even then, processing errors meant hundreds of thousands of people were never checked at all. 2.6 billion gone. Then there's CDPAP, the Consumer Directed Personal Assistance Program. This lets elderly and disabled people hire their own caregivers, including family members. Good idea in theory, total disaster in practice. CDPAP spending exploded from $2.5 billion in 2019 to $12 billion in 2025. That's almost 5 times higher in 6 years. The state calls it a fiscal crisis. Governor Hochul called it one of the most abused programs in the history of New York. Investigators found over $1 billion in fraud and waste. Caregivers billing for patients who were dead. billing for patients who were hospitalized, billing for patients who lived in another country. One man collected hundreds of thousands of dollars claiming his family was caring for his mother in Manhattan. She was actually living overseas. His brother pretended to be her during inspections. Some caregivers billed 23-hour days every day for family members, earning over $200,000 a year. And here's what makes it worse. Between 2021 and 2023, the state paid $14.5 billion in home care services without proper electronic verification. The federal government requires digital check-ins to prove caregivers actually showed up.
What time does your shift end, sir?
I'm not going to hot yoga, Linda.
New York's compliance rate, 11% for home health care, 56% for personal care. They paid billions without checking if anyone was even there. The fraud isn't just systemic, it's criminal, and the cases keep coming. February 2026, federal prosecutors charged 2 Queensmen with running a $120 million scam. They owned adult daycare centers and a pharmacy. For 10 years, they paid elderly patients cash and grocery gift cards to sign up for services. Then they billed Medicaid for treatments that never happened, prescriptions that were never filled, daycare visits that never occurred. 10 years, $120 million. And they only got caught because the FBI, IRS, and federal health inspectors teamed up to follow the money. This wasn't the first adult daycare bust. In 2025, a Brooklyn operator admitted to a $68 million fraud through the same scheme. Fake services, fake patients, real checks from the government. Then there's transportation fraud. Medicaid pays companies to drive patients to doctor appointments. Simple concept, easy to scam. In November 2025, a couple from Orange County was charged with stealing $3.5 million. They billed for trips that never happened. They claimed they drove patients separately when they actually carpooled them together. They paid patients cash to go along with it. The district attorney called it the largest Medicaid fraud case his office ever prosecuted. And it's not just private scammers. There's a federal investigation into the state itself. Whistleblowers told Congress that New York has been running a scheme for over 20 years involving hospital funding. The state receives federal Medicaid dollars for safety net hospitals. But instead of giving that money to the hospitals, they allegedly forced the hospitals to give it back. One hospital, Nassau University Medical Center, reportedly lost over $1 billion this way. Congress opened an investigation in July 2025. They subpoenaed documents from Governor Hochul's office. The House Oversight Committee is now working with federal health officials to determine if this was illegal. If true, this isn't fraud by some random scammer. It's fraud by the state. So why can't New York stop this? 3 reasons. First, the state doesn't investigate enough. New York ranks 3rd lowest in the nation for Medicaid fraud investigations per $1 billion spent. They have the biggest program and one of the smallest enforcement efforts. That's not an accident. That's a choice. Second, the money is too easy. Medicaid is a reimbursement system. You submit a claim, you get paid. The government checks later, if they check at all. Scammers know this. They submit thousands of fake claims, collect millions, and disappear before anyone notices. Third, politics. Medicaid touches seniors, disabled people, immigrants, low-income families. Any politician who talks about tightening eligibility gets accused of hurting vulnerable people. So they don't talk about it. They let the rolls grow, they let the spending explode, and they hope no one does the math. But the math is catching up. New York's Medicaid problems are about to get much worse because the federal government is pulling back. In 2025, Congress passed a budget bill that cuts Medicaid funding nationwide. New York estimates it will lose $13.5 billion per year once the cuts fully kick in. That's money the state will have to replace or cut services. The state budget director says New York faces a $750 million shortfall this year. By 2027, that gap grows to $3 billion. And there's another problem. The feds just closed a loophole New York was counting on. The state created something called the MCO tax, a way to squeeze extra federal dollars out of Medicaid financing rules. Albany expected to net $3.7 billion from this trick over 2 years. But federal regulators shut it down. Now the state gets less than half. That's a $2 billion hole in the budget. Governor Hochul built her spending plans around money that isn't coming. Meanwhile, the federal government is demanding more accountability. New work requirements for Medicaid recipients start in December 2026. Stricter income verification is coming, and Congress is watching New York specifically because of the fraud headlines. The days of spending without scrutiny are ending. So what does New York do now? The state has started some reforms. They consolidated CDPAP under a single company to reduce fraud. That transition has been messy. 150,000 workers reportedly left the program, some because of missing paychecks, but the state claims it will save $1.2 billion per year. Senate Republicans are demanding a full independent audit of all Medicaid spending. They want outside investigators, not state employees, reviewing the books. Federal prosecutors are ramping up cases. The healthcare fraud strike force has charged over 6,000 defendants nationwide since 2007, recovering tens of billions. New York is now a primary target, and Congress is investigating the state directly. If the Nassau Hospital scheme turns out to be real, Hochul could face serious legal and political consequences. But here's the reality. None of this fixes the core problem. 3 million people are enrolled who may not qualify. Verification systems are broken. Enforcement is underfunded, and the program grows faster than the state can audit it. Until New York actually checks who's on the rolls and removes people who don't belong, the fraud will continue. The scammers know the system, and they know no one's watching. Let me be clear about something. Medicaid is not the problem. Medicaid is a lifeline for millions of people who genuinely need help. Seniors who can't afford nursing homes, disabled New Yorkers who need daily care, families who lost jobs and lost insurance. The problem is mismanagement. The problem is fraud. The problem is a state that spends more per person than anywhere in America and gets worse results. New York pays the most and investigates the least. That's a system designed to be exploited, and it has been for years, for billions. This isn't a partisan issue, it's a math issue. And the math says New York is bleeding money it can't afford to lose. If you're a New York taxpayer, you're paying for this. If you're a Medicaid recipient who actually qualifies, fraudsters are draining resources that should go to you. If you're a caregiver doing honest work, scammers are wrecking your industry's reputation. Everyone loses except the people gaming the system. If this breakdown helped you understand what's happening with your tax dollars, hit that subscribe.
So that's the latest on that lady there. That was a good one. Fraud out of New York, Medicaid. So we got some more short ones.
Relaxation and tonight, a major driver's license fraud scandal first exposed by WDRB, a money-driven scheme to sell licenses illegally to immigrants in Louisville. Now 5 people are charged in the case.
It hurts me that I'm talking about this.
Every time we spoke with Melissa Moorman, she talked about vindication.
I would just like to see some justice.
She was fired after blowing the whistle on potential fraud at the NIA Center driver's licensing branch.
I would like to clear my name.
Now a new release from federal prosecutors may do just that. 5 people are charged with fraud and money laundering in the scheme that Moorman brought public. Among those indicted, Ariel Matthews and Danita Wilson, the same people Moorman named in her wrongful termination lawsuit against the state. Prosecutors say the former clerks issued licenses without driver's tests and altered records in the state system to recognize licenses that didn't exist. Robert Correa, Lazaro Castello Rojas, and Raul Tellez Ojeda are accused of coordinating the process. They didn't work at the branch, but brought people in to jump the line, charging anywhere from $200 to $1,500 each. The state says it revoked about 2,000 licenses, meaning this scheme may have brought in hundreds of thousands of dollars. The indictment says Wilson and Matthews even paid colleagues to keep it quiet. Moorman said all along she wouldn't go along with it.
Melissa Moorman's been made a scapegoat, and she was just merely following orders.
WDRB Investigates began digging into the scheme a year ago. The Transportation Cabinet illegally withheld documents, and we fought the case in court and won.
They're going to produce something.
We learned it wasn't just Louisville. Revoked licenses went across Kentucky.
It's pretty shocking. Everybody was talking about it throughout the day in Frankfurt.
Now lawmakers are considering major changes, including shutting down the regional branches or shifting some of their services to county clerks and judge executive offices. One important clarification:
undocumented workers would come into the office in groups.
Prosecutors say the licenses went to non-citizens who had legal status, not undocumented immigrants, as Mormon originally believed. Investigators say many didn't speak English, didn't know the rules, and thought they were paying extra fees for an expedited process. So far, none of the immigrants issued those licenses are being charged. And late this afternoon, the governor's office laid out steps it's taken to prevent future problems, including enhanced fraud training, cross-state tracking of issued credentials, the development of a reporting procedure with law enforcement, new supervisory requirements, and a weekly...
Well, more fraud, you guys. They found more fraud. Looks like there's fraud everywhere. The next one is 5 minutes. Paul, I'm not sure if I played this one. I might have, but it looks like it's an important one.
$24 hours playing slots, then you get up to $1,000 back to play again.
Plus, you get 200 bonus spins to play Huff and More Puff.
Roll with us.
Download the Hard Rock Bet Casino app today.
At least once a year, all around the world, it happens. From the moment the new day dawns to the 12th chime of midnight, it is utterly unavoidable. No continent is safe. No country is spared. No city is immune. No matter where you are or what you're doing, there's no escaping Friday the 13th.
Well, it's actually very interesting, the whole idea about Friday the 13th, the mysteriousness, the fear, the dread. There's a natural human desire to understand things, to know why something happened. And sometimes, if the unexplainable happened, but there was a curse involved, you say, aha, I have the reason. We never know when they're going to turn out to be real, but we have to give all of them a fair shot and say, maybe.
Believe it or not, there's some statistical evidence which suggests that more bad things happen on Friday the 13th than any other day of the year. But is it really cursed? And if so, how? Although it would seem that the public's awareness of Friday the 13th really came of age in modern times, as it turns out, the origin of this curse actually dates back to the 14th century.
It goes back, in my opinion, to what happened to the Knights Templar.
Yep. How's this
So the
one,
Knights
you guys?
Templar were founded in the 12th century, and they were the world's first
Oh, I can't
combination
play it, you
of
guys.
warrior and monk.
They won't let me play that one. They gave me a heads up warning on my headline here.
Not a coincidence. January 30, 2026, Epstein files released. February 3-7, 2026, Spain, China, Cuba, Russia, Japan, and Australia all announced breakthrough cancer treatments at the exact same time. The U.S. withdrew from the WHO on January 22nd, and suddenly cures appear everywhere.
So for decades, we had no
Okay.
cancer
Awesome.
cures. Then the Epstein files
Yeah.
exposed big pharma connections, and suddenly everyone has cures.
Bill Gates was named in the Epstein files. Gates has massive investments in pharmaceutical companies and WHO funding. Within days of his name being exposed, countries start announcing treatments the WHO allegedly suppressed.
So you're saying they were hiding cancer cures to protect pharmaceutical profits?
Look at the timing. Pancreatic cancer vaccine, 60 to 80% success rate in trials. Colorectal cancer immunotherapy breakthroughs. Russian mRNA cancer vaccine, all announced in a 7-day window after Epstein files drop.
But couldn't this just be coincidental timing with World Cancer Day on February 4th?
That's the cover story. But ask yourself, why did countries wait until after the U.S. left the WHO to announce these? Social media exploded saying America has been holding back development for years to please pharmaceutical giants.
So the WHO was the gatekeeper preventing cures from being released.
Gates funded the WHO. Gates is named in Epstein files, meeting with him multiple times. Gates has billions invested in big pharma. Now that he's exposed and the U.S. left WHO, suddenly the floodgates open with cancer breakthroughs.
You're connecting Epstein to cancer suppression through Bill Gates and the WHO?
The conspiracy theory writes itself. Keep people sick, sell them expensive treatments forever, make billions. Cure them once, you lose the customer. Epstein's blackmail kept this system protected.
So Epstein wasn't just trafficking, he was blackmailing people to maintain control over entire industries?
Within 1 week of files being released, pancreatic cancer breakthroughs, colon cancer treatments, lung metastases cures, HPV-related cancer vaccines, blood cancer therapies, all simultaneously announced.
That timing is genuinely suspicious. Why all at once if these were in development for years?
Because the people protecting big pharma profits just got exposed in the Epstein files. Once their blackmail network collapsed, countries felt safe to finally release what they'd been sitting on.
So we could have cured cancer years ago, but it was suppressed to maintain pharmaceutical profits?
The most profitable patient is one who stays sick but never dies. Epstein's network made sure that system stayed protected. Until now.
This is the darkest thing I've ever...
Victor, something. Yeah, I always talk over, I've been doing this for 6 years, so you must be a new person. Just be respectful, please. Thank you.
History discovered in Lower Manhattan.
Yeah, a fully intact Underground Railroad stop has just been found. Sharon Crowley had more on this remarkable discovery.
This may look like an ordinary piece of furniture, but behind this built-in chest of drawers holds a centuries-old secret.
This is a monumental moment in our history. Many New Yorkers forget that we are so connected to what happened, not just in the abolitionist movement, the slavery situation in the South and in the whole country.
Preservationists making a remarkable discovery hidden inside the Merchant House on East 4th Street in Lower Manhattan. The 19th century mansion was once a private home. Now it's a museum. Historians finding an actual stop on the Underground Railroad in here. The Underground Railroad was a secret network of safe houses used to help slaves trying to get to freedom.
This is really an important find for our city, and it's important to know how New York played a vital role in the Underground Railroad and how people came here, and how the person who built this intentionally as a place for people to come to be safe and secure.
The narrow 2 feet square space is believed to have been secretly constructed in 1832 by the home's original owner, abolitionist Joseph Brewster. It drops down 15 feet to the ground floor, but it is believed that at one time it went all the way down to the basement.
And I actually went down half body in. It was emotional because it showed in such a small space, people will do anything or everything just to protect and preserve their freedom.
The secret passage was right up here on the second floor of this home, and it was inside one of the bedrooms. Take a look. They kept it behind a closet that connects 2 of the bedrooms. I'm going to show you where it was, right behind this door. New York City Council member Crystal Hudson, a petite woman, showing us just how tight it must have been for those trying to hide inside this passageway. The dream of curators here is to explore this history even further and see if this historic property has more secrets to reveal. In Lower Manhattan, Sharon Crowley, Fox 5 News.
Okay, underground tunnels with the railroad cross, I think. So we got a new lady on TikTok. It's about 10 minutes.
Are you, don't get me wrong. I loathe you. I hate you. I despise you. I think you're one of the worst human beings to ever waste oxygen.
Is this one okay? Let me
So
know.
I'm not like concerned for you so much as I'm just curious if you're okay. I thought I was looking at someone who just recently suffered a traumatic brain injury and wasn't quite aware of it yet. Are they, what? Did they unplug you? Were you in the middle of a fucking reboot? That was some of the worst of your gaslighting I've seen. That was some of the worst. I mean, when Kyle Rittenhouse says that you need to be fired, I think you've lost them, babe. Kyle Rittenhouse, Pam Bondi needs to resign. I think we all needed this. We needed to watch her humiliate herself. What the fuck was that? I didn't make a video as it was happening yesterday because I needed to digest. Obviously, it's theater, right? It's always fucking theater. What's going to come of it? Nothing, but maybe something. I mean, look at this photo of her completely unfucking bothered
Yeah, I don't like
with
that.
Victims.
That video was bad. Sorry. We played Trish video, 9 minutes.
And your fan pack.
Ilhan Omar, oh my gosh, you really stepped in it now, didn't you? You know, she's just not a very bright woman. She decided to get herself in new kinds of legal trouble because she put this little doozy out. Here's I'm very close to the screen today. That's what happens when I travel. So I hope you like me. The leader of the, we'll use the P word, okay, Protection Party is trying to deflect attention from his name being all over the Epstein files. Excuse me. Don't forget, it was Donald Trump who called the FBI on Epstein. Oh yeah, that's come all out. He's actually the one who like triggered all this. Don't forget, it's his administration that actually released the files. Oh, Biden didn't do that. Biden and Harris didn't go near that. Why? Because all their friends would have been implicated. And then it was actually Donald Trump's administration first time around that locked the guy up. So I'm just saying, okay, you go with what you're going to go with, Ilhan, because we know the truth doesn't actually matter to you in any way, shape, or form. You got your own little version of truth there, your Somalian version of truth. Apparently she's still longing for Somalia because she says in this particular tweet, again, which is going to land her in all kinds of legal trouble because she's just committed libel here. At least in Somalia, they execute, and then she used the P word again, not elect them. Woo! Okay, so now she's slandering him, libeling him with the P word. And then on top of that, seems to think it's a good idea to execute politicians. I mean, Ilhan, do you really want to go there? Because there's a lot of people that really don't want you on this planet right about now. All right. We don't do that. Have you ever noticed that? Like the left is so rabid. They're so filled with anger that they go to the worst possible place. And we don't actually do that. Like we don't call people fascists, and we don't call people words from World War II. We certainly don't. Well, I mean, I guess in the Epstein files, well, there are a few of those. We'll leave the P word aside for now. But we don't actually call for like executions. Thank you very much. And yet that's what's okay. That's what's tolerated on the left right now. I mean, it's no wonder that a new study out of CNN actually shows that people are getting increasingly frustrated with that party, with the entire Democratic establishment, because the majority of Americans now see them as, well, lunatics. I mean, maybe not quite lunatics, but certainly too liberal. We'll get to that in a little bit because I think it's an important little factoid to understand. Basically, the amount of Americans out there that look at the Democrat Party and say, you know, this is not for me anymore because they've gotten so crazy. But again, they're the ones using verbiage like Ilhan Omar is using here. So this is actually going to land her in a lot of trouble. And knowing Donald Trump as I know him, this is not going to go without some kind of legal ramification. Don't forget, what did he sue the Daily Mail for? Oh, forgive me, not the Daily Mail. Sorry, Daily Mail. It was the BBC. right? The BBC. He's talking about $1 billion. Don't forget what he sued ABC News for. He wound up with somewhere around $16 million when it was all said and done. Don't forget what he sued CBS News for. And Ilhan Omar, she's fair game. This is not protected under the First Amendment. You can't just come out and say things like that about someone. In fact, when I refer to her constantly, or do refer to her as somebody who's alleged to have been involved in this fraud organization. She's an alleged money launderer. She's an alleged fraudster. Yeah. All right. But you notice how I use the term alleged? Because in America, that's what we do. But she's actually coming out and saying that. And so he's got every right to now go after her for libel. And I'm thinking, hey, why not 30 mil? Okay, take the entire 30 mil from her. And yes, put her in prison. And yes, you probably want to deport her too. You have a bill now in the House and in the Senate, all for deportation for the likes of Ilhan Omar and other fraudsters out of Minneapolis, out of Minnesota, out of California, because it's happening there too. And, you can't just come to this country and think you can defraud everyone. Again, you're welcome to go back to Somalia if that's the kind of game you want to play. Of course, there's no one to defraud in Somalia because nobody has anything. Let's go to James Comer, who spoke about this on News Nation with a lovely woman who came from Fox there and is now hosting a program there. Let's take a look.
This is a simple question. It shouldn't take long to answer. Reporters are trying to ask for the questions, and she just walks by and won't answer questions. But she finds enough time to tweet something absurd like that and compare her beloved Somalia to the United States like it's a superior country. If she likes Somalia so much, she should go back to Somalia. And I can tell you, with what we're investigating in Minnesota and the depositions and transcribed interviews that we're getting right now as we speak with the whistleblowers in the Minnesota state employees union that have been dealing with these social programs, it's really bad, the amount of Somali fraud in all the different welfare programs. So Ilhan Omar really needs to keep her mouth shut.
Yeah, she does need to keep her mouth shut. I don't think she knows how. Well, in fairness, she does seem a little teeny bit more quiet lately. I mean, other than that tweet, which now she's in total panic mode. She's going to double down in hiding now because she doesn't want to talk. She doesn't want to implicate herself because now her husband is being looked at by Treasury, by James Comer. And now, of course, the Trump lawyers are going to be breathing down her back because of this libel thing. I mean, she's really kind of done this to herself. She's her own worst enemy. But fine. Okay, like that's the game you want to play. You better be willing to play with the big boys, Ilhan, because it's game over, if you would. Let's go to James Comer on here.
We've been informed in the last few hours that the Ethics Committee is probably going to have to be the committee that takes that investigation up. I'm disappointed to learn that. We thought that the Oversight Committee could do that. So we're going to be writing a letter in the morning referring this to the Ethics Committee. And it's a simple investigation, Sean. There are two companies listed on Omar's husband's financial disclosure form. One was worth between $1,000 and $5,000. And then the very next year, it was worth between $1 and $5 million. Another one was worth, I think, $25,000. And the next year was worth between $5 and $30 million based on the ranges on the financial disclosure form. Either way, those are significant increases in value. We just have questions that any American would have. What type of businesses are these? That we know that the Department of Justice in the Biden administration was investigating Omar's husband for reports of fraud. We know there's a winery in question that has a big value on there that some believe isn't worth anything. So there are a lot of questions. This investigation shouldn't take long. She should just willingly come in, she and her husband, and answer these questions. It shouldn't take more than 15 minutes. But thus far, over the last 2 weeks, it's been crickets from Omar.
Yeah, I mean, aside from her crazy tweet where she's now subjecting herself to an entire libel suit. And again, I said 30 million might be the right number just because that's what she's alleged to have made. Look, this is actually significant for her. And just to explain this out, it originally started in the Ethics Committee. And then Comer transferred it to the House committee where they were trying to look at basically, not just ethics, but they were going to be able to, in their estimation, I think they hoped that they could get a little bit more data because it was the Oversight Committee, and that's controlled by the Republican Party. And so the thinking was, okay, we have now a Republican-controlled committee looking into her, but now it's gone back to ethics. He sounds frustrated in that, but I think it's actually for the best because ethics committee is totally nonpartisan, which means you got 5 Dems and you got 5 Republicans. And so we can't come out and say, okay, this is a partisan hit job, which it's not at this point. Like, just to be really clear, this is not a partisan hit job. This is a, if you stole from America, if you did anything like that, then that's just not going to be tolerated at all.
Okay, that's the first one. I got a second one with Fish. Still no Billy Bean out yet. Nine minutes.
Financial Crimes Enforcement Network for whistleblowers that can actually be compensated if they come forward. Why wasn't this done before? Seems like a no-brainer.
I don't know, Joe, but it's very exciting. I think it's going to be a great way to ferret out waste, fraud, and abuse, starting in Minneapolis, which has been ground zero. So we are encouraging whistleblowers who know about fraud, people who are stealing from the American taxpayer, to come forward. At Treasury, we're setting up a website, and we will be giving rewards up to 10 to 30% of the fines that we levy.
Wow. All right. So did you hear that? 10 to 20% of the fines. Like, that is absolutely incredible. And some people are really going to wind up a creek without a paddle, right? Let's go to Brad Finston, representative out of Minnesota.
So Minnesota is the epicenter of fraud. And, the voters that I represent in southern Minnesota, the good, hardworking people of southern Minnesota are sick of being taken advantage of. And this fraud has made life unaffordable for folks. We see government just throwing money down the drain, and we need accountability. There is the CEO of our state has mismanaged our state. Governor Walz has ruined the accountability and the credibility and the goodwill of who we are as Minnesotans. So we demand answers. We demand people to go to jail.
Is that he's not going to run for re-election?
No, he knew he was unelectable. He knew that this fraud is on his hands. He has provided no accountability to the voters of Minnesota. There is no path that he's taking this fraud serious, and that we haven't seen a single state employee fired. We haven't seen a single person of his administration that's been let go. This fraud's on their hands.
What do you think the voters think of Tim Walz right now?
Well, I think if he were to run, he would have lost in a big way.
Wow. Pretty incredible stuff, right? So it looks like they're really targeting these guys in a pretty serious way. And you now have representatives from Minnesota. We've also seen Emmer, for example, Bill Emmer, come out and say he was absolutely adamant that they go after and not only put them in jail, those that are involved, but actually deport them as well. And so this is another representative from Minnesota echoing a similar sentiment. So overall, I just say it's not looking good for any of these guys. And you would think that Minnesota politicians would be aware of this, right? That they would think this one through and figure it out. And yet Tim Walz, again, not the brightest bulb. Tim Walz actually trying to turn it on its head and coming out yesterday swinging, saying, okay, no, we're gonna go after the federal government. Like, you haven't had enough, buddy. You're walking a tightrope here. I think everybody knows, Tim Walz, that you looked the other way. And so before you go out there and say, oh, well, we want something, our pound of flesh from the federal government because they were here trying to police our streets. By the way, doing a pretty good job at it. I mean, aside from a couple of the incidents, right? But, you look at what Tom Homan said yesterday, and they were able to, importantly, save more than 3,000 kids. I mean, that stuff matters. And to round up criminals who should not be here. And yet Walz comes out and says this. It's almost like he's trying to deflect once again away from the real story, which is the fraud and the stealing of American taxpayer dollars by people who, honestly, at this point, should they even be in our country? If this is how they're going to treat us, I think we know the answer to that. Let's go to Walz.
The federal government needs to pay for what they broke here. There are going to be accountability on the things that happen, but one of the things is the incredible and immense costs that were borne by the people of this state. The federal government needs to be responsible. You don't get to break things and then just leave without doing something about it. So we're going to be asking the federal delegation to be investing and doing the things necessary.
I mean, guys, good luck with that. I mean, you get Jacob Frey doubling down on this as well, telling CNN he's going for the jugular too.
Governor Walz was talking about that as well, and he said he wants federal compensation because of what happened in Minnesota. He said you don't get to break things and then just leave without doing something about it. Do you agree with that there should be federal compensation?
I do. To give you an idea of the damage that we have collectively experienced, this has indeed been catastrophic. Now, to be clear, we're not victims here. We are tough. We've got the kind of grit in Minneapolis that I think is admirable. We're going to make an extraordinary comeback. And of course, we have to acknowledge the impact on people, on children, on small and local businesses, on our economy.
Okay, so let me get this straight. You guys steal $19 billion from us. We go to Minneapolis and Minnesota in general to try and help you clean up your streets from people who shouldn't be here. You decide, okay, well, we're not going to go along with this. We're going to play hardball because Keith Ellison, big, tough AG that he is, the guy that, according to Josh Hawley, belongs in jail, should be a prisoner right now because he believes that Keith Ellison actually took money from the fraudsters for political donations because he was promising to keep them safe. Keith Ellison is the one who said, okay, well, we don't have to get along with ICE. We don't have to work with them in any way, shape, or form, even though they did during the Obama years, because they realized it was expedient from a political purpose, right? To kind of gin up all this commotion. And you're talking about Minneapolis. This is like ground zero for the BLM riots, et cetera. They had a population primed, ready to go on this. And so sure enough, they get everybody all worked up. They encourage people to defy the law. They don't allow for the jails to be working with ICE. And consequently, yeah, lots of bad stuff happened. And yet they have the audacity to come around and say, well, we're going to sue you. No. I think the answer is we're going to sue you. The federal government is going to sue you. We're going to get $19 billion back plus interest. Okay. That's how this is going to go down. And if you can't pay it, I don't know what to tell you, but we're certainly not going to be on the hook for anything. Absolutely not. There's a real breakdown here. And these people are ungrateful. These people are off their rockers. They actually think they can now turn this back as a, well, we're going to get you kind of thing. Well, no. We're going to get you, okay? In fact, Congress is already requesting all of the data from Ilhan Omar's hubby. I mean, the question is, did he make off with some of that $250 million? And did she therefore make off with some of that $250 million? It certainly feels that way. Again, James Comer putting a letter out to her. So whether it's House Ethics Committee or whether it's, the Committee on Oversight, I don't really care at this point. I actually like that it's House Ethics because, that you can't try and squirm away from that. You're going down in some way, shape, or form because there is no way. There's just no way. I'm just going to come right out and say it. I mean, I know it's alleged, whatever. There's no way that your business, your little winery that doesn't have any grapes, that doesn't have any vineyards, that doesn't have any wine is worth $5 million. I mean, we already heard that the business shut down, and there's no way your little venture capital firm is worth $25 million. I'm telling you, it's not happening. I've been a financial reporter my entire career. I know what valuations look like. This is some kind of shenanigans. Okay. That's what this is. This is some kind of fraud, I believe. And I think it's all going to come out. And she's freaking out. And yet she's too stupid to quit while she's ahead and makes a stupid reference to Donald Trump. And now she's going to get sued for libel on that front. So Timmy, Ilhan, you guys have a very tough row ahead of you. And as for Keith Ellison and Tim Walz, I'd like to know, did they profit off of this as well for their political campaigns or maybe even for their deep pockets? Ilhan Omar, do you have any property over in Dubai? Because, $700 million was making its way out of Minneapolis in suitcases. This is what's been documented by the TSA. It was more than any other city in the entire nation. And you just happen to be married to a guy with a known history of fraud allegations for his cannabis company. Oh, yeah. He had a few of those. What a winner.
Okay, we got 2 Trish videos today so far. Yeah, I just checked. Squads, nothing yet. Might be tomorrow night. So, Paul, we got one I'm not sure of. It's 8 minutes. If I played it again. I can find it. Where did I put it? Ah. Dang it. Okay, here we go. I might have played this one. I'm not sure.
This footage was captured by urban explorer Marcus Chen in March 2019, deep inside an abandoned Cold War bunker system beneath the streets of Portland, Oregon. Watch carefully as his flashlight sweeps across the concrete corridor. See those wooden crates stacked against the wall? Notice the symbols painted on them. Faded, weathered, but unmistakable. Now watch as Marcus approaches closer. His camera shakes. He's breathing harder. Because what he's about to discover inside those sealed containers will unravel one of the most twisted criminal conspiracies in American history. A case that law enforcement thought had gone cold 15 years earlier. 23 victims, 3 continents, and a killer who used the past to hide his present. You know that feeling when you stumble across something in your attic that doesn't belong, maybe an old photograph you don't recognize, or a key that doesn't fit any lock in your house? For Marcus Chen, a 28-year-old software developer with a passion for urban exploration, that feeling hit him like a freight train on a cold March afternoon in 2019. Marcus had spent months researching the abandoned military infrastructure beneath Portland. The city sits on a network of tunnels and bunkers built during the Cold War era, most of them sealed off and forgotten. But Marcus had obtained permits, legitimate ones, mind you, to explore and document these spaces for a historical preservation project. He'd been in dozens of these locations before. Empty rooms, rusted equipment, nothing that couldn't be explained away as remnants of a paranoid age. But this particular bunker complex was different. The entrance was hidden beneath an old industrial building in northwest Portland, one that had been scheduled for demolition. Marcus had maybe a week before the wrecking balls would erase this piece of history forever. He descended the metal ladder with his camera, his headlamp, and that mixture of excitement and nervousness that comes with entering a space where no one's been for decades. The first few rooms were exactly what he expected. Concrete walls, military-issue furniture rotting away, pipes dripping condensation. Then he turned down a corridor that seemed to stretch into absolute darkness, and that's when he saw them. 12 wooden crates, stacked deliberately. Each one about 6 feet long, 3 feet wide, and painted on every visible surface were symbols that made Marcus's blood run cold. Not because he was a history buff, but because these symbols had no business being in an American military facility. Let me paint you a picture of what went through Marcus's mind in that moment. He's standing alone, 50 feet underground, staring at what looks like Nazi memorabilia in a bunker that should contain nothing but American Cold War relics. His first thought? This has to be some kind of military trophy, captured materials, war souvenirs. But then he noticed the locks, heavy, modern padlocks, not vintage, not rusted, recent. Someone had been here, someone had sealed these crates with care, and that's when Marcus made the decision that would blow open a case that investigators had given up on years before. He called the police. Detective Sarah Morrison had been with the Portland Police Bureau for 16 years, and she'd seen her share of weird calls. But Nazi crates in an abandoned bunker wasn't even on her bingo card for strange discoveries. When she arrived at the industrial building with her partner, Detective James Park, and a team from the Bureau's Major Crimes Unit, she honestly expected to find some urban explorer who'd let his imagination run wild with some old military surplus. The descent into the bunker changed her mind real quick. The smell hit us first, Sarah would later testify. Even before we reached the corridor where the crates were stored, it wasn't overwhelming, but it was there, subtle, chemical, like formaldehyde mixed with something earthier. I've worked enough homicide cases to know what decomposition smells like, even when someone's tried to mask it. The forensics team suited up. They documented everything. The symbols on the crates, the positioning, the locks, even the dust patterns on the floor that showed someone had walked this path recently. Then came the moment everyone was both dreading and anticipating. They cut the first lock. The lid came off with a creak that echoed through the corridor. What they found inside defied immediate comprehension. Bodies, multiple bodies, wrapped in thick plastic sheeting, then wrapped again in what appeared to be vintage military blankets. Each one had been treated with chemical preservatives. That explained the smell. And attached to each victim was a small metal tag, the kind you might see in a museum exhibit, bearing a name, a date of death, and a location. But here's what made it even more horrific. The forensic pathologist who examined the first body on site noticed something the others would miss until the full autopsy. The plastic sheeting had been sealed while the victim was still breathing. Tiny perforations in the material near the face, made from the inside. Fingernail marks on the inner layer of plastic. These people had been buried alive in preservation fluid, then sealed in crates and left to die in the dark. The first crate contained 3 victims. The second contained 2. By the time they'd opened all 12 crates, the count stood at 23 bodies in various states of mummification. 23 human beings, ranging in age from 19 to 72, who had been methodically murdered and preserved like specimens in some twisted collection. Detective Morrison organized the most massive crime scene operation Portland had seen in decades. The bunker was sealed off as federal investigators joined the case. The FBI's evidence response team, the Department of Justice, even representatives from Interpol, because some of those metal tags indicated the victims had come from overseas. The tags themselves told a story that didn't make sense. Not yet. The oldest tag was dated September 2003. The newest was dated January 2019, just 2 months before Marcus Chen's discovery. 16 years of killing, all ending up in this forgotten space beneath the city. Now here's the thing about cold cases and missing persons investigations. They're messy. People disappear for 1,000 different reasons, and not all of them involve foul play. Adults have the right to vanish if they want to, but when you suddenly have 23 bodies with names and dates attached, you can start connecting dots that were invisible before. The task force assembled by the FBI began running the names on those tags through national databases. VICAP, NCIC, NamUs. And that's when the case took its first major turn. 8 of the victims had been reported missing between 2003 and 2019, but not from Portland. From cities scattered across the country, Seattle, San Francisco, Phoenix, Denver, even as far as Boston and Miami. They were immigrants mostly, people who'd come to the United States seeking asylum, seeking safety from persecution in their home countries. The kind of people who might not have extensive family networks to notice immediately when they disappeared. The kind of people who might slip through the cracks. The other 15 victims? No missing persons reports at all, which meant either no one had reported them missing, or they'd been reported under different names than what appeared on the tags. Detective Morrison's team began the painstaking work of identifying the bodies through DNA, dental records, and facial reconstruction where possible. It was going to take months, but while that scientific work proceeded, another investigator on the task force noticed something that would crack the case wide open. His name was Agent David Kowalski, and he'd been with the FBI's art crime team for 12 years before transferring to violent crimes. He knew his history, and when he examined the symbols painted on those crates, really examined them, photographed them, enhanced the details, he realized something everyone else had missed. They weren't authentic. The symbols were painted in the style of World War II Nazi markings, sure, but the paint was modern acrylic. The wear patterns were artificially created. Someone had gone to great lengths to make these crates look like historical artifacts, but they'd been constructed within the last 20 years. This wasn't about ideology, Agent Kowalski explained to the task force. This was about cover. Someone wanted these crates to look like they'd been hidden away since 1945, like they were some kind of war criminal's time capsule. But they're props, elaborate, detailed props. So what was the real story? What were these crates actually hiding? The answer came from the most unexpected source, a banker in Buenos Aires, Argentina. His name was Ricardo Vega, and he'd been following the news coverage of the Portland bunker discovery with intense interest. Because 15 years earlier, in 2004, his sister had disappeared while traveling through the United States on what was supposed to be a cultural exchange program. Her name was Isabella Vega, and she was 23 years old. Pay attention to what you're about to see.
Okay, I thought that was an important video. I wasn't sure. Well, Newman did it again. I got a short clip. Dang it. Uh, I'll play. I'll play this one next. 4 minutes. You guys seen this one or not?
Now. I'm not required to show ID to enter my building. Let me scan the card.
You don't fit executive access. Last warning, hand over the ID or you're being detained.
You're blocking the owner of this property. This camera is recording.
The security feed in the lobby of the Vance Plaza was high-definition recording at 60 frames per second, capturing every polished marble tile and every shaft of morning sunlight cutting through the glass atrium. But the camera couldn't capture the feeling of pride Eleanor Vance felt every time she walked through those revolving doors. At 62 years old, Eleanor didn't walk with a strut. She walked with the calculated precision of a woman who had spent 40 years turning a small inheritance into a commercial real estate empire. She was wearing a bespoke cream-colored suit that cost more than most mid-sized sedans, her silver hair pulled back in an elegant tight bun. She carried a leather briefcase that had traveled with her to closing tables in London, Tokyo, and New York. To anyone paying attention, she looked exactly like what she was the owner of the building. But Trent Miller wasn't paying attention to the cut of her suit or the quality of her briefcase. Trent was 29 years old with a jawline he spent too much time admiring in the mirror and a security uniform that was a size too tight in the biceps. He had been working for Titan Security Solutions for 3 weeks, stationed at the front desk of Vance Plaza, a post he considered beneath his capabilities. He spent most of his shift scanning the lobby for threats that didn't exist, desperate for a moment of action to break the monotony of signing in couriers and directing lost interns. When he saw Eleanor Vance walking toward the private elevator bank, the one reserved exclusively for executive leadership, he didn't see the CEO. He saw an older black woman carrying a bag moving with a confidence he found irritatingly presumptuous. Eleanor didn't even look at the security desk as she approached the turnstiles. She retrieved her gold-tier access card from her purse, the one coded with unrestricted clearance to every square inch of the 30-story structure. She raised it to the reader, expecting the familiar beep and the green light. "Hold it right there," a voice boomed across the lobby. Eleanor paused the card, hovering inches from the scanner. She turned her head, slightly confused. The lobby was relatively quiet at 9:15 a.m., the morning rush having largely subsided. She looked around, assuming the security guard was addressing someone else, perhaps a courier trying to bypass the freight entrance. But when she turned back, she found Trent Miller standing directly in her path, his chest puffed out, his hand resting ominously on his duty belt. "Excuse me," Eleanor said, her voice calm, possessing the rich, smoky timbre of a woman who had silenced boardrooms with a whisper. "I said hold it," Trent repeated, stepping closer, invading her personal space. "Where do you think you're going?" Eleanor blinked her mind, taking a moment to process the absurdity of the question. "I am going to my office, young man. Please step aside." "The service entrance is around back," Trent said, pointing a thumb over his shoulder toward the loading docks. "Deliveries, catering, and soliciting go through the freight elevator. This lobby is for tenants and authorized guests only." Eleanor turned her body fully toward him now. The morning sun hit her face, illuminating the lines of age and wisdom etched there. She didn't look angry. She looked disappointed. "I am not catering, and I am certainly not a solicitor. I am going to the 30th floor. The 30th floor is executive management." Trent sneered, a smirk playing on his lips. "You got a cleaning crew appointment up there because they didn't call down for one." The air in the lobby seemed to drop 10 degrees.
Ma'am, step back. You do not have authorization.
Okay, that was over by that one. Sorry about that one. So we got a 3-letter word, 2 parts. So Paul, no. I got still 2 Doug videos to play and a bunch of other short ones still.
that the federal government desperately tried to bury. And when I say dark, I mean absolutely horrifying. We're talking about a 10,000-acre ranch where things happened that were worse than the island, worse than Palm Beach, worse than the Manhattan townhouse. And the most shocking part? Federal prosecutors under the Trump regime explicitly told local law enforcement to stay away from this property. They said, "We've got this. We'll handle the investigation." And then they did absolutely nothing. No search warrants, no subpoenas, nothing. And now we have the emails that prove it. So buckle up, because this is going to blow your mind. Let me start with the basics so you understand the full scope of what we're dealing with here. Jeffrey Epstein owned a massive ranch in Stanley, New Mexico, in Santa Fe County. This property was somewhere between 7,500 and 10,000 acres. To put that in perspective, that's bigger than some entire towns. And Epstein didn't just own this ranch under his own name. He owned it through a trust called the Zorro Trust, spelled Z-O-R-R-O. He acquired this property way back in 1993. Think about that, 1993. That's 26 years before he died in 2019. This wasn't some recent purchase. This was a long-term operation. And here's what makes this location so strategically valuable for someone running a trafficking operation. It's close to the Mexican border. New Mexico shares a border with Mexico. And according to multiple sources, including tips sent to the FBI, this ranch was used as a routing location for trafficked children coming up from Mexico before they were dispersed to the East Coast. Let that sink in for a moment. This wasn't just a place where abuse happened. This was allegedly a hub, a distribution center for a trafficking network. Now, when Epstein was arrested for the second time in July 2019, there were immediate questions about this ranch. Local authorities in New Mexico wanted to investigate. The state attorney general's office wanted to get involved. They knew something horrific had happened there because victims were coming forward with testimony about what went down at that property. And you know what the federal prosecutors told them? They told the New Mexico authorities, stand down. We're handling this. Don't touch the ranch.
Yeah, part one. Okay, this is part two.
Explicitly state, we have not searched the New Mexico property. This is in December 2019, 4 months after Epstein's death. They're admitting in writing that they never searched the ranch. Never. Not once. Why? What were they protecting? Who were they protecting? These are the questions we need answered. Let me read you one of these emails directly so you can see this with your own eyes. This is dated December 20th, 2019. It's from federal prosecutors to Epstein's estate trustees. Here's what it says. We're not yet exactly sure what our ability is to provide to the trustees what is effectively discovery in a now defunct criminal case against Epstein himself. That said, I can convey that we did produce to defense counsel detailed search warrants in connection with the New York property. We will also review the status of the search warrant return with respect to the island property, and we have not searched the New Mexico property. Did you catch that? They searched the New York property. They're reviewing the island, but the New Mexico ranch, untouched. And this is 4 months after Epstein's death. The crime scene, and make no mistake, this was absolutely a crime scene, was left completely intact. No forensic teams, no evidence collection, nothing. And remember, multiple victims have testified about being abused at this ranch. So why wouldn't you search it? Unless you're trying to protect someone. Unless there's evidence there that implicates people you don't want implicated. Now let me take you back even further, because the FBI knew about this ranch for years. We have an email from September 30th, 2009. That's 10 years before Epstein's second arrest, where someone sent a tip directly to FBI
Last
Director
2 minutes.
Robert Mueller. Let me read this tip to you because it's absolutely damning. It says, some interesting facts that should be passed to the investigative agents on the Epstein case. I will also copy Director Mueller. Zorro Trust, belonging to Epstein, won an $80 million lottery ticket in New Mexico. Actually, it was Oklahoma, but we'll get to that. Zorro Ranch, belonging to Epstein, sits close to the U.S.-Mexican border, where most trafficked children are routed prior to being dispersed to the East Coast. Several high-ranking officials and friends of Epstein have confirmed that he has sexual relations with underage minors at that facility. This was sent to the FBI director in 2009, and they did nothing. For 10 years, they sat on this information. And when they finally had the chance to investigate in 2019, they chose not to. They actively chose not to search the property. Why? What's on that property that they don't want found? Now, let's talk about this lottery thing because it's bizarre and it might explain part of how Epstein was moving money. The Zorro Trust, Epstein's trust, won an $80 million lottery ticket. And we don't know all the details, but there are other emails in the Epstein files where he's discussing having girls use lottery tickets and lottery numbers. Was this a money laundering scheme? Was he using lottery tickets to move large sums of cash in a way that looked legitimate? Because winning the lottery is one of the few ways you can suddenly have tens of millions of dollars and not have to explain where it came from.
That was good. Okay, we got 3 short clips from the California lady. And I got one other short. And then we'll get to the 2 dog videos.
The corrupt governor of California due to a high flight risk after they uncovered yet another scandal involving Newsom's wife, who allegedly owns an entity that received nearly $100 million from the government. Newsom's former chief of staff, who became a cooperating witness, handed over documents detailing transfers made between 2023 and 2025 to this entity in the millions of dollars, revealing that Gavin Newsom used the mother of his children as a front to embezzle public funds. Pam Bondi has every reason to sue Newsom and even request pretrial detention based on all these elements that point to what could be the biggest corruption scandal in the history of California and perhaps even the United States. Because the scandal is so unprecedented, the state is now being called the fraud capital. I am Fernanda Perez, and what is happening here is something never seen before, with the possibility of Gavin Newsom being raided at his luxurious mansion by the FBI and taken away in handcuffs. The cleanup in California has begun, ladies and gentlemen. The state of California will be cleaned up along with the top brass of corrupt Democrats who protected Newsom so fiercely because they also helped him embezzle billions of dollars. Yes, Newsom used various methods to embezzle money. But now, with all of this being exposed and with the Democratic leadership potentially heading to jail, who will be the next big fish to fall? Nancy Pelosi, perhaps? Senator Rick Scott.
Okay, that's 1 there. I got 2 more.
Used his own wife as a pawn to pull off a multi-million-dollar heist. I'm Fernanda Perez, and what I'm about to tell you will make your jaw drop. The governor set up a so-called charity foundation under his wife's name, pretending it was all for a good cause, when in reality it was just a front to siphon millions from public contracts. This entity, supposedly run by Newsom's wife, but actually controlled by Newsom himself, landed more than $98 million in sweetheart deals from state-owned companies, money that was supposed to help California's underprivileged communities. But what is this mysterious charity? The truth, it doesn't even exist. No office, no real staff, just a holding company created in 2023 to launder public money straight into Newsom's pockets. If Newsom can use his own wife to embezzle millions, what more proof do we need to see him behind bars? The corruption is so deep, it could land both Newsom and his wife in jail. That's why the Democrats in California are scrambling to distance themselves from him. They know the arrest is coming. They're even talking about booting Newsom from office now that the whole scheme has blown up and threatens to take them down with him. You won't believe how far.
Okay, I got 1 more to go. All three good ones. We'll put, oh shoot, we lost. I gotta reset it again.
What's left of Gavin's glamour boy image. Agents say they've uncovered an alleged get out of Dodge scheme cooked up by Gavin Newsom himself. Private jet on standby, bags half packed, the whole 9 yards. Translation: Mr. Hair Gel was getting ready to bail the second things got too hot. I'm Fernanda Perez, and Newsom's mansion might as well be ringed with crime scene tape right now. Here's the spicy part. His own ex-chief of staff flipped, coughing up paperwork that shows millions funneled through a charity front link to Newsom's wife. Allegedly, the governor used the mother of his kids as a human shield while siphoning taxpayer cash. Bold move, right? And guess what? Prosecutors already have a witness, a paper trail, and an attorney general who's itching to make an example out of California's golden boy. If this sticks, Newsom won't be sipping Cabernet in Napa. He'll be swapping stories in county lockup. But the wrecking ball doesn't stop with him. Every Sacramento insider who rubber stamped those shady budgets is sweating bullets. Follow the money long enough and you'll hit bank accounts so fat they squeal. The same legislature that protected Newsom could wind up watching him do the perp walk and maybe joining him. So, Patriots, here's the $1 million question. Does Newsom go down soil, or does he drag the whole Democrat machine into the pit with him? Smash that follow button if you're ready to see these swamp creatures in handcuffs, because this show is just getting started. California, wake up. The FBI just nuked.
Okay, the three good ones from her from California. Started following her. Okay. Here's Newsom right here.
And the California legislature are not here
Oh,
and
this-
don't support this proposal. They note that
Veteran-
they're essentially
veteran benefit.
outlawing an entire industry of people who are helping with the backlogs with accredited VSOs. And at the same time, they're concerned that those people, there are 2,600 claimants who are now in limbo because of this bill. I wonder, I mean, I also know Assemblyman Jeff Gonzalez, the only disabled veteran in the legislature, wanted you to take his name off this bill, not even sign it, just based on that alone, that his name is on there in a way that he does not want. Why not just take more time for these groups to figure it out, or why not find other consumer protections that, could have landed so that everyone could be on the same page?
I don't add names or remove names from bills. It's the purview of the legislature. And I'll just say this, I'm proud to sign this bill. It's the right thing to do.
Oh,
I was mentioning to the group a moment ago, I got an interesting text,
right thing
someone
to
you know,
do.
who said he was hired for a quote unquote load of money and needs it. And was tempted to lobby me today to advance that opinion and point of view. He said, absolutely the wrong thing to do. Said, sign the bill. No amount of money could dress my conscience if you did not. So I am very clear this is the right thing to do. That said, let me ask the author to answer your specific question, because that was debated with his and her colleagues in the legislature, and they can fill, I think, and color in a little bit more of their.
Governor, most of the veterans who serve in the
Yeah. Angie, we go another hour at least. So here's another one guy from TikTok, Paul. I think this is a new one, I think.
It's about 6 o'clock here, almost 6 o'clock here in California. A couple of hours ago in Washington, D.C., this is breaking news. Sarah Beckstrom, the National Guardsman, along with her associate that were shot yesterday, she passed away a couple of hours ago. I want folks to understand I'm the founder of EPAC, Ensure the Preservation of America and our Constitution. I have people on my team that are former DOD, intelligence and counterintelligence agents, former CIA, judge, investigators, lawyers. We have 5 people on my team. Basically, we brief each other each week. We're trying to bring information to you that the Marxist machine in this country is keeping from you. That's my goal. Having said that, it is now official with the death of this young lady and primarily just the attack yesterday. I was waiting for the threat status to be changed, and it is now high. The national security threat, the public safety in this country, and the national security threat are basically tied together. The national safety and the public safety are at extremely high risk. The risk threat status is at orange. No one is safe on our streets right now.
This old 1K or Paul?
The war, basically, you can call it, it's official. The declaration has been made. If you think that's not the case, I beg you to reconsider. Walk the streets of DC. Go walking around. See how safe it is. Walk the streets of Chicago. Walk the streets of New York. We don't know where it's going to come from. We don't know who's going to bring it. But the threat is extremely high. No one is safe in this country anymore. The threat status is at orange.
Yeah.
It's only
Yeah, I don't know
one more click,
how new
and
it
it will
is.
be at red. That's extremely high. And guess what? That's when the nation will be shut down. But right now, President Trump, thank God, he's in office. He's going to mitigate this. Recently, Stephen Miller basically was saying anybody here prior to 2021 is basically, they're not the threat. Anyone part of the Biden 21 to 24, I guess what you might say, act of war, the Biden administration during his term basically declared war and acted as I guess what you might say, acted in a war fashion to bring people into this country to purposely flood. They trafficked people into this country purposely to bankrupt this country. That's part of Marxist political warfare. I am an authority on Marxist political warfare. Biden committed an act of war, and his administrative state basically trafficked people in there. And here's the part I want to say. Why is the threat so high right now? Because of the people between 2021 and 2024. Because 1.5 million people got into this country undetected. We don't know who they are, their names, or their intentions. This is a huge problem. The threat is high. It is at orange. This, right now, the public is no longer safe on our streets. But more importantly, here's the thing I want to say. This is going to get mitigated. Stephen Miller, Trump's national security advisor, has said anyone who came here as part of the Biden administration or were used as pawns as the Biden administration's act of war to flood the country with migrants is going to be deported, especially the ones that have, I guess what you might say, warrants who have committed a crime. Anyone here prior to 2021 might be able to, for the most part, be okay. Here's the thing I want to say. I'm representing a gentleman that's running for Congress here in California. Okay. Look into a thing called the Dignity Act. It's immigration reform that can, for the very first time, help people who are here in the country prior to 2021 get documented. Those people that are working and basically contributing that have been here for several years prior to 2021, they're going to be recognized for their value. And the Dignity Act will help them get recognized for their value, help them get documented. It's not a path to citizenship, but guess what? It will help them get out of the shadows and live part of the American dream. The threat status in this country now is lifted to orange.
it's high. No one on the streets is safe. Please go to preservingamericaepac.com. Watch our documentaries for free about Marxist political warfare. I'm an authority on that type of warfare, and it has now gone conventional. The Marxists within our federal government in Congress, Mark Kelly, Slotkin, these people, Jasmine Crockett, they're putting the words out, the rhetoric out, and guess what? Guess what happened? National Guardsmen got shot, and Sarah Beckstrom died of her wounds. The threat is real. God bless.
Okay, that's another one from him. Let's play the first Doug video. I got the first Doug video coming.
Guys watch this show regularly, then you know I'm not here to terrify you or run you down some wild goose chase conspiracy. Welcome to Doug in Exile.
He always plays music.
Marjorie Taylor Greene video. I feel very bad for her because I don't like people living under a lie. So I'm here to bring this to you guys because many of you might also be living under a lie. You're welcome to challenge me and say I'm wrong, but you're going to need to show me evidence. Here's Marjorie Taylor Greene.
I think what this shows to America is that our government has betrayed victims, innocent victims, ways that we can't even comprehend, to the point of child sex trafficking, satanic rituals, maybe cannibalism.
Okay, hold it right there. Guys, let me know in the chat below. I have to find out if my audience believes, is our government, our current U.S. government, remember she's talking about Trump. This is Donald Trump's government administration. This is the FBI under Kash Patel. This is Pam Bondi. That our government currently, the reason why they don't want to release the Epstein files is because, one, our government is involved in sex trafficking. Our government, she says, Donald Trump, our FBI, our military, Pete Hegseth, Tom Homan. Okay, these people are involved in trafficking. Number two, satanic rituals. Our form of government, the United States of America, is involved in satanic rituals and, yes, cannibalism. People eating people is the U.S. government right now. And Marjorie Taylor Greene is the only good guy that says, I'm against those things, and that's why I have to tear down the Trump administration. Let me know in the chat below if you guys believe that. Do you believe our government is involved? Because I'm on the right. I'm a conservative's conservative. I love the founders. I love the military. I love patriotism. I hate big government. But our government is not involved in sex trafficking. If anything, our government, the only part of our government that could be involved in sex trafficking is in going after the Epstein files and spending so much time and money on this lunatic wild goose chase of an ancient history of disgusting things that happened 20 years ago, is we're actively allowing more trafficked victims today because there's kids right now with duct tape on them, stuck in someone's closet, a big, hairy, gross molester of a man, sweaty, and we don't have enough people at the Department of Justice to go after that guy because we're putting all our resources on the Epstein files because of people like Marjorie Taylor Greene. Welcome to Doug in Exile.
And rape and trafficking of women, and that fell almost inferior to some of these other things. But it's the vast cover-up for the rich, powerful elites. It's really the international deep state. And it's
these are just words. Be specific. What she means by the international deep state, you know what she means. The Jews. I just got back from Israel. I saw no secret space lasers. It's Israel controlling the United States. By the way, if that's true, if Israel is controlling the United States, why is Netanyahu in disagreement with Trump? Netanyahu wants to go after Iran and depose their leadership, and Trump wants to slow walk it. He goes, hey, hold on, you may have to stay in and do talks. Why are they disagreeing? Why not a united front? See, all these stories, they're just stories. Marjorie Taylor Greene, you have to be specific. I demand evidence for these accusations, and there's no evidence. Satanic rituals by the U.S. government.
The people that live in some sort of sphere that the common man can't even comprehend.
That's the secret knowledge. The common man. You guys are all too dumb to understand it because you're just I'm just a common man, Marjorie Taylor Greene. This is all going on over my head, and I'm too dumb to understand that our government is participating in cannibalism under the Trump administration. Okay.
Doesn't walk it. And it's also pulling back the veil, which sadly wasn't surprising to me, that many of the things that the people have had to endure, such as COVID, such as things that happen in our economy, businesses that get supported, industries that get supported, others that get torn down, seems to be planned years in advance by this gigantic network of the international deep state, the international elites. And
I don't believe you. I don't believe it. They're too dumb. COVID may have probably was created in a lab by gain-of-function research under Fauci, but I don't believe they planned to roll it out and make everyone's. There's no evidence of that. So it could have accidentally gotten out, and the Chinese lab was notoriously sloppy for years, not just with COVID, but with other stuff. But to say that our government is conspiring with the Jews to release COVID on our people with China? I'm sorry. I'm not going there with you. I'm just not that conspiratorial. Maybe you guys are. Maybe you can explain it to me. Or better yet, don't explain it to me.
They called people like me and probably you and many others conspiracy theorists.
Yeah. I wonder why our government is involved in cannibalism.
And made us said that we were all crazy.
Yeah, you're crazy.
But yet here it is. It's coming out. It's not a random person.
It's not coming out. It did not come out. It has not come out. Not one new piece of knowledge has come out with the newest. What's the newest tranche? 6 million Epstein documents. They tried throwing Pam Bondi in jail for not releasing these documents, and nothing, not one new piece. All we know is that Epstein was a creep, and yes, he killed himself. I don't have any evidence to counter that.
Saying that they were saying things like they're eating babies or they're eating human flesh.
Guys, is anyone still out there in my audience? Is anyone still out there that they're eating human flesh? When did this happen? How did I miss this? I've been studying conspiracies my whole life. I want the evidence. I want a picture of a person eating human flesh. Abe Lincoln, the Jews, I want to see them eating human flesh because this is the kind of garbage that goes all over. This is a tabloid magazine. The tabloids, they were for dumb people. We watch them and, it said Bat Boy, the boy who's half bat. On the cover, and alien invasions. And now Marjorie Taylor Greene is sitting here on a normal guest show.
Not a random person saying that. There's a lot of people saying it.
A lot of people.
And then there's not a random person.
Well, I want to know one person who's saying it, and I want a photograph or a video clip. You're telling me in this modern age where everyone in the world has a cell phone, no one has a video of a baby being eaten or served up by a government agent. And there's always some conspiracy but they control the videos. That's why they can't release.
And accusing some of our top government leaders of being associated with one of the most disgusting people, Jeffrey Epstein, who is a convicted pedophile.
And he's dead, thankfully. He's also dead, Marjorie. There's nothing else to drum up. He's dead. And I'm going to go into more of these victims. I'm going to move on from this just because I feel so bad for her. I really feel bad for her. Here's Sean Farash. This is the damage that happened over the hills. He says, Thomas Massey and Ro Khanna swore that 4 people's names being redacted in the Epstein files were pedos being protected. You got to let that sink in, guys. Think if it was one of your names. Pam Bondi released a bunch of documents, had 4 names redacted. Thomas Massey and Ro Khanna came out and said, these are 4 of the perpetrators that Trump is protecting. He's protecting these perpetrators, these evil men, by having redact the names. So now Ro Khanna and Thomas Massey said, whenever these names get revealed, it's going to expose 4 criminals guilty of the worst crimes known to man, right? So the latest tranche Pam Bondi released the documents after they said they were going to try and imprison her or get her fired for redacting those names. She unredacts the names, and now everyone wants her fired because now she's revealed 4 names of people who were not guilty of anything, and now they're going to nail our government. They're going to sue them for libel because these 4 people were not guilty of anything. You know what the 4 names were? They were basically 4 people in a police lineup. You know how in a police lineup, they bring in 7 people, right? One of them is guilty. The other 6 are innocent. Well, the people that were in the police lineup, that is people that our government knew were innocent, had their names in these documents, and Thomas Massie said that they were guilty. And now innocent people are being slandered with the guilt of trafficking for Epstein. And these are innocent people. Just so you guys, now I've explained it. Now you can see the outrage. In America, you're guilty. I mean, you're innocent until proven guilty. And these 4 people got slandered by the pro-Epstein witch hunt. They got witch hunted. You know the Salem witch trials? We assume those people were not really witches, and they killed 17-year-old girls who might have had epilepsy, innocent people. That's what's happening today. Here's Sean Farash, who we love. Their sycophants pushed this all day and night last week, only to find out that these 4 names were rightfully redacted. They were part of a police lineup and had no connection to Epstein or his crimes at all. I'm all for transparency. I'm all for accountability, but we can't be this reckless with information. Yes, we can't. Massie and Ro Khanna were confident that there was a there in the documents. There wasn't. Guys, there's no there. You're being played. Trump, MAGA people are being played against Trump. There wasn't. And now 4 people have essentially been doxxed as a result. That is, their home addresses have been released of these people. They're going to get death threats and accused of everything for being innocent. They'll just move on to their next stunt and act like this never happened. And as usual, their simps will continue to give them a pass. That is a fact. Here's Rep. Nancy Mace. This is another truth about the victims. There's a lot of women in the Epstein files who trafficked other women and girls to Epstein. She says there's a special place in hell for these individuals. Guess what? Many of the victims in the Epstein files, those women are also perpetrators who trafficked other women. Do you understand that? Many of the victims trafficked other women. This is true of many pedos. They're also victims themselves of molestation. And then they themselves go out and do the same thing. It's true. That's why this thing's a big, giant, colossal mess. It's not all neat and tidy like you think. Here's Thomas Massie. So these are people now losing their jobs because they showed up in the Epstein files. And now they're resigning from their jobs, though they're innocent of these crimes. Here's Mike Davis says you smeared 4 people to Thomas Massie. And you don't have the character to correct your mistake. See, Thomas Massie? Just keep going. Thomas Massie is now doing the full quote, "I'm not suicidal, I fear for my life" routine straight out of Marjorie Taylor Greene's playbook, which she lifted straight out of the Democrat playbook. At this point, how much more evidence do you Massie minions need before you finally admit that this man is a fraud and you've been played from the start? So that's what they do. They come out and pretend like they're victims and go, guys, I will never commit suicide in case I commit suicide. See, that appeals directly to the conspiratorial-minded people. And finally, in Esquire magazine, gee whiz, Marjorie Taylor Greene sure bought a bunch of stocks just before Trump paused his tariffs. They call her Lady Luck, but there is room for doubt. This is her knowing exactly when to buy a bunch of stocks right before the Trump. And we're going to go into more of this with, I think I have another Ross Givens event later this month where we invite you guys to show you guys how insider trading works. I just wanted to back this article up with Marjorie.
Okay, that's the first, Doug. I got one more, Doug. Trisha came out with a 10-minute one about CNN news with Trump.
To admit it. You know this kills them. It kills them over at CNN, but nonetheless, they had to say and report this. Watch.
Okay, look, this is some encouraging news on the cost of living, right? Inflation took a big step in the right direction to start the year off. So consumer prices up by 2.4% year over year. That is an improvement from 2.7% in December that beat expectations, which were for 2.5%. In fact, this is a new 8-month low for annual inflation, month over month. Prices up by 0.2%. Also a step in the right direction, also beating expectation. Now, economists look really closely at core inflation, which excludes food and energy. Core inflation came in at 2.5%. That's notable because that's the lowest annual inflation rate for core since March of 2021, before the inflation crisis. Now, while we can't exclude food and energy from our family budgets, that's important because economists say that's a better indicator for where inflation is going. And when you look at the trend for inflation over the last few years, you can see there's been some improvement, right? It's been a little bit bumpy on this chart. It's been bumpy, but it has improved. There was this uptick in inflation starting last spring after the president slapped massive tariffs on imports. Inflation started to go heat back up to 3%, but thankfully it's trending back down. Now, when we look at some of the notable categories as far as what people are seeing at the store.
It's great. This is a really, really good report. And, everybody said, oh, it's going to go way up because you see, we have all of these tariffs coming in, and Trump tariffs are going to drive prices way, way higher. And what do you see? Exactly the opposite. I mean, this is incredible. It's just incredible. Okay. And why is this happening right now? I think a lot of this has to do with the productivity gains, in part coming from AI, for example. In fact, that's been massive. And you have to take that into account. And I think Bessent, when he's been thinking about the economy, as well as Donald Trump, they're all taking everything into account. And so this is just a tremendous, I think, victory for him. And he knows it, by the way, he knows it. I want to go to the president speaking on this inflation report just a short time ago outside the White House. Here we are.
Numbers, very low inflation. We brought costs way down, and the numbers were surprising, except to me, they weren't surprising. So the inflation numbers just announced, as you know, are way down, and we have it back in track. We had the worst inflation in the history of our country, and now we have very modest inflation, which is what you want to have.
Indeed. This is really, really good. Again, another Fox explainer for you here on the wonderful news that we're getting on the inflation front.
Wages, that is wages accounting for inflation, rose 1.25% from January 2025 to January 2026. So people over the first year of the Trump administration made $1.25, 1.25% above inflation. So in the 4 years under President Biden, real wages fell 1.4%. So Americans turning the corner on making more to afford their lifestyle. Experts think this adds to the argument for another rate cut.
Especially with the jobs numbers that we saw on Wednesday. And I think all of these help us help the Fed have reasons to wind up cutting maybe prior to what they normally would have done.
And we get the next CPI inflation report a week before the March meeting.
You guys.
This is really good. I mean, this is exactly the opposite of what anybody had anticipated. Of course, at 76 Research, we were predicting some of this in part because you're seeing right now a lot of prices coming down. Take a look at this. PepsiCo, General Mills, Giant Food. General Mills, nearly 2/3 of their products in North America, they've had reductions right across the board. PepsiCo, they're knocking the chip price down by 15%. Lay's, Doritos, Cheetos, Tostitos snacks, all coming down by 15%. Giant Food has also lowered prices on produce, dairy, meat, pantry staples. I mean, guys, this is rather magnificent, right? So you see all of these prices coming down, and where does that leave the Fed? Well, with more room to cut. Okay, so Kevin Warsh is going to be coming into a really good scenario there. They like to call it Goldilocks, right? And as inflation comes down, that gives him the room to cut rates, and therefore hopefully open up a little bit more of the economy, especially the middle class, who has been plagued by these higher rates in terms of what it means for home prices and mortgage rates, in terms of what it means for car loans, used car loans as well. So if you free up some of that credit, you're going to get the engine starting to roll again. Big stuff. We've been doing very well at 76 Research. I encourage you, go look at those portfolios that we have on the website. Well, it's a special subscription, but that's a great value add for you. We are beating the S&P, which is always rather nice, right? 76research.com. Use code word dollar to get the 76 report. Look at the 76 Research portfolios. There's 3 of them, as I said, and really, really important for you to take a peek at.
Oh, I guess that was 6 minutes, I guess. So, we're moving on. We got, well, let's get the second Doug video done. We'll get the second Doug.
Bet, win or lose. Oh, yes, we're back from Israel. Welcome to Doug in Exile. Dan Bongino, though, has the news. He's trying to stay focused on Trump's accomplishments,
10 minutes.
which I believe is the only thing that will help the Republicans win in 2026 at the end of this fall during the midterms. And it's important because if the Democrats win, they're going to instantly change the filibuster, as Dan Bongino is going to say in a minute. Here's a clip of him. He's back on the air. I wanted to welcome Dan Bongino back on the air, and I'm happy to see him straightening everybody out. Here's Dan Bongino.
Folks, we talked about a topic yesterday that lit up the eye of. I get a lot of emails about the show. I got a ton on this. This is a very controversial topic, but I have to address it because the two are related. The filibuster and the SAVE Act. If we all can't vote in elections we trust are free and fair. Free meaning people who are eligible to vote can vote. Obviously, fair meaning who you voted for is who you voted for, and the outcome is fair. Not hard to figure out. If we can't trust that our elections are real, and the Democrats who said they were cheated out of every election ever until President Trump won, and then it changed. How dare you guys talk about stolen elections? They're so full of shit. The SAVE Act, where we'd implement national voter ID, is unanimously supported by every racial demographic, Democrats, Republicans, everyone. The Democrats have out of arguments about it. If we don't have this, folks, if we don't have it, we're going to be in a world of trouble going forward because the Democrats love cheating. They just do.
The SAVE Act, I think we're about to get it passed. They've been chipping people off slowly. The Republicans are doing wider and wider support for it to get it passed. So it's coming. I believe the SAVE Act is going to happen. And if that happens, then that will save elections from Democrat cheating because you'll have to have a photo ID, a valid photo ID to be able to vote. So that just undermines the entire bringing in illegals thing.
Love open borders. They love the welfare state and they love cheating in elections. That's just a fact. The only way to get it passed is going to be to drop the filibuster. Listen to me.
Now, here's where I think he's wrong, but I'll let him go ahead because I think if you pass the SAVE Act, and I believe we're getting close enough to it, but I'm all for nuking the filibuster too. I just think, if you pass the SAVE Act, you don't need to nuke the filibuster, so you should be working harder on passing the SAVE Act.
They are going to, if they take power after the midterms, the Senate. Remember this show. Guys, can you remember the Flag It? Have we done Flag It yet? Chad, get on this. We need you guys. Flag it in the chat. What's the date today? February 13th? Is it Friday the 13th? Friday the 13th. Oh my gosh. Friday the 13th. I'm just waiting for Jason Voorhees to pop in here. Flag it in the chat. Thank you. We haven't done that in a while.
He's going to predict and go, if the Democrats win, which I don't like even saying if the Democrats win. He's acting like it's inevitable. What do you mean if the Democrats win, they're going to nuke the filibuster? Of course they're going to nuke the filibuster. They're going to do worse than that, son. They're going to pack the Supreme Court with only liberal Supreme Court justices to outnumber the right-wingers, the right-wing appointments, undermining an election. It's going to be nuclear, guys. If they take the majority in the House of Representatives and the Senate, they'd have to do both to be able to pull this stuff off. What do you guys think? Is it possible? We're going to do more on Dan Bongino. Look, I got his Twitter feed up here. Here's Dan Bongino, what he's posting on. This is the actual stuff that's going to win the election for Trump because bread and butter issues, people are hungry. People are starving. People want their jobs. They want the bread and butter pocketbook issues. And Trump has basically turned the economy around. He's doing a stronger economy than anything in my lifetime, guys. I'm watching it every day. Here's CNN had to admit that our inflation is better now. Remember, the news lied about inflation under Biden, literally about mathematical numbers. They lied about inflation, saying that it wasn't going up under Biden. Like, that's just math. You just look at numbers. Yes, that is inflation.
Well, Kate, look, this is some encouraging news on the cost of living, right? Inflation took a big step in the right direction to start the year off. So consumer prices up by 2.4% year over year. That is an improvement from 2.7% in December that beat expectations, which were for 2.
Okay. It beat expectations is the biggest thing you have to know. And that this is on CNN. This is Democrat territory. I love bringing the news from Democrats from CNN because they have a left-wing bias. So anytime a left-winger comes in and goes, inflation's down under Trump.
Roku's self-serve ads platform. It's easier than ever with Ads Manager. Sign up today.
We are strong. We come back. We push for.
It means more than if it comes from my side. So I like hearing it come from the other side, right, guys? It means you can believe it more. And by the way, these same experts that we're all predicting that only be maybe 50,000 new jobs this quarter, and they just got the jobs numbers come in, 150,000 new jobs, completely blew everyone away. One of the lowest unemployment numbers in America in recent history. I'm only saying when Democrats are saying it, it makes me laugh because they're out of spin. And I'm happy to see that. And this is how you win an election, guys. It's going to be over economic issues this fall if Republicans can stay on topic.
0.5%. In fact, this is a new 8-month low for annual inflation, month over month. Prices up by 0.2%. Also a step in the right direction, also beating expectation. Now, economists look really closely at core inflation, which excludes food and energy. Core inflation came in at 2.5%. That's notable because that's the lowest annual inflation rate for core since March of 2021, before the inflation crisis.
And what happened in 2021? Oh, Joe Biden became president. There you go. These are just statistics, guys. These are numbers. I love when it supports my bias and what I think already. And it's getting backed up by a bunch of Democrat pollsters. Here's Dan Bongino on Just the Facts, folks. This is on More of the Facts. This is what Clay Travis posted, and Dan Bongino reposted it because I think Dan Bongino is closer, having once been in the Trump administration, and he just left it a couple of weeks ago. He has more insiders there. So he's actually a real good source for right-wing news and to stay on topic. Here's Clay Travis. Year one of Trump has been incredible. Consider now, guys, these are numbers, okay? This is math. This is an opinion. You can argue with you can come in and give me, if these are false numbers, correct me in the chat below. Put in the Democrats and socialists and leftists. Put in the real numbers, okay? Here's the numbers. 4.4 GDP. Gross domestic product at the end of the year, 2.4% inflation, which is relatively low. Record high stock market. I just watched the Dow go above 50,000. I have money on the stock market. I know that one's true. Record high stock market. Lowest murder rate since the 1900. Since 1900. I reported on that too. Again, these are numbers. These are facts. You can spin and you can say, oh, it's all mainstream media spin. It's all mainstream media lies. Explain this. Lowest murder rate since 1900 under Trump. Most secure border in history. Also true. 0 crossings at the border, a 10% decline in government employees. So he's slashing the size of government and all those people getting their gravy train jobs for life. Trump is shrinking the government and therefore the cost of government. It's honestly extraordinary. Guys, that's not opinion. That's just fact. And finally, I want to give you guys a quick story about how while I was in Israel, and I'm going to show you guys some clips, but while I was in Israel, we went to see the Dead Sea Scrolls. And so while I was over there, I happened to see this clip by Joe Rogan talking about the Dead Sea Scrolls. Dead Sea Scrolls were discovered in the 1950s. They have bits of Isaiah in the scrolls. And so when the experts looked at them, they were able to read them and say, our Bibles haven't changed. The Dead Sea Scrolls prove it because they predate. People said like, oh, they've changed so many times to the translation. I'll let Joe Rogan explain it here. He's been on a Bible and church quest.
The most fascinating things that I can't stop thinking about is how the book of Isaiah from the Dead Sea Scrolls was verbatim the same as the book of Isaiah that they found 1,000 years later.
Okay, let that sink in, guys. For people that doubt, that doesn't prove the Bible's true, but it proves it didn't change over time. Because the Dead Sea Scrolls have Isaiah from, I think it's 500 BC, but as early as 500 BC. And that's before Jesus came, right? Jesus came in the years, let's call it 0, but really it's going to be around 5 AD, let's say. Well, Isaiah predicts him. Isaiah is a prophecy of Jesus. So they said like, oh, it had to have been edited or changed after the 1900s. After the year 5 or whatever, because there's no way that it could accurately predict it. So that's all Joe Rogan is saying here and what blows him away about the Dead Sea Scrolls.
1,000 years. Wow. And it was exact, word for word.
Yeah.
Like, that's incredible.
It's not only incredible, but I always think the fact that the Bible endures is interesting.
Yeah. I just came back from the Holy Land, guys. Got a ton of footage. We were in Jericho. We did the Mary of Magdalene churches, the Holy Sepulchre, the Wailing Wall. It was an amazing, life-changing moment. My hats off go to EO Tours, and shout out to Deeb, our guide, and to Mark, our bus driver. We got so much love from them. Incredible information. I learned so much more even about Islam, because there's all kinds of a huge chunk, Dome of the Rock is there, right there, next to the Wailing Wall in Jerusalem. So just an amazing time. I got to see the walls of Jericho. We floated in the Dead Sea. I love sharing those clips with you guys. So thank you.
Okay, we got 2 Doug in today. I got one more 10-minute with Susan Collins news. Someone had a video on her. And then I got 4 short ones. And that's going to wrap. Chico. Hey.
And it misses the real risk of what's actually going on. I keep seeing this in my comments, and I spent my career at CIA and NSA. I also advised other intelligence agencies. I now have my own corporate intelligence firm. All these opinions are my own for entertainment purposes only. If this was about taking oil, we wouldn't be seizing tankers. We would be buying the oil because it's cheaper and it's easier and it's a lot less risk for us. That's not a hard concept to understand. This is actually about control of cash. We have sanctions on Venezuela and they are moving oil out, making money off of it because our sanctions are not working. So we have moved from paperwork, which was our diplomacy move. We put sanctions on them as a way to not escalate, but that's not working. They're still moving hundreds of millions of barrels of oil out a day. And this money does not go to Venezuelans. It keeps this isolated regime alive. DC, for years, our government considers Venezuela a criminal state. The people in Venezuela are not happy. This regime is kept alive by the money that it is making off of these sanctioned oil sales. So it funds their corruption, and they're not operating alone. And this is the point that I really want to get across. Russia and Iran and China all tied into these pipelines. Iran is the one that started the shadow fleet. Russia joined in 2022 when we put sanctions on them for going to war with Ukraine. And China's always trying to fuck us. So from Washington's view, this isn't an oil problem. This is a security problem in the Western hemisphere that we are talking about. Because now you have China and Russia and Iran who have access to the United States now. Missiles that couldn't get across from their countries, maybe could. They could get closer. Don't have oceans separating us at that point. There is so much risk to what is going on right now in Venezuela that people's hatred for Trump blocks them from seeing it. And I want to be very clear. I am a moderate. I have voted left and I have voted right. I lived in DC for most elections. My vote doesn't fucking matter. What I do on here is try to give a different perspective. Sometimes it might align with the right. Sometimes it might align with the left. I don't care. It's not about right or left. And if that's what you think, and if you're just like, everything left I agree with and everything right I agree with, like that's a you problem and currently a US problem. US is not seizing these tankers.
Okay, that's the first one with her. I got 3 more. She does a good job on TikTok.
This, I found some things that I hadn't heard about that are pretty dark, and I wanted to share with you all because misery loves company. I spent my career at CIA and NSA. I also advised other intelligence agencies. I now have my own corporate intelligence firm. All of these opinions are my own opinions. Keyword. All right, number 1, authorities found a whole dental room in his house, like chair, lights, drills, operating lights, like not casual dentistry. It's not like he was practicing to be a dentist. My theory was part of the control, punishment, etc. He doesn't strike me as the type who's into universal health care, trying to give everyone free cleanings. Number 2, he had a whole breeding ranch plan. So his New Mexico compound, he met with geneticists, Nobel Prize winners, and he had this plan to spread his seed. Wanted to impregnate like 20 women at a time and improve the human race. Like, yes. So he basically wanted this New Mexico ranch to be an insemination factory of these young girls. Ew. And I saw in the documentary that they asked Virginia to have, like, him and Ghislaine wanted her to have their baby, but they were obviously gonna take the baby, but it would be like her egg. So I also think this contributed, in my opinion, to his wanting of that age group post-pubescent, because then he could impregnate them, and he got off on this fantasy and he wanted to use them to spread his seed. Number 3, he told people that he wanted his head and genitalia frozen after his death so that he could be brought back in the future to spread his DNA. Are we seeing a trend here? He thought so highly of himself. He was such a narcissist that he was like, everyone needs my DNA. I really hope no one honored that. I think this is why he hung around a lot of like big name scientists, and he never talked about it in his emails. Well, he didn't like talk about his obsession with science in his emails. It was more politics and the networks that had to do with other countries, but he kept the company of many renowned scientists. Very interesting. On one hand, he's wanting to improve humanity, and on the second, he's abusing girls and all of the sick shit he did. I don't know what's wrong with people. All right, the 4th one is that Epstein and his network.
Okay, I got 2 more. We'll get the last one, 10 minutes. 1, 2.
Just named Iran as the vice chair of the Commission for Social Development. This Commission for Social Development is in charge of promoting democracy and human rights and women's rights across the globe. And yesterday, the UN was like unanimously, for whoever votes in this committee, I don't think the US is actually part of this committee. They're like, yeah, Iran, you seem like a great vice chair. I'm so excited for you to take on this role, since you've killed tens of thousands of people and don't promote women's rights or human rights or democracy. Like, what in the fucking gaslighting is this? I don't know what's going on. Maybe it's like when the teacher gives the bad kid a role so that they feel responsible, but that's not what's going to happen with a bunch of fucking psychopaths. But what do I know? We just sent the USS Gerald Ford, one of our largest aircraft carriers, to join our other armada out in the Middle East. So Netanyahu came on Wednesday to talk to Trump. Trump said, look, I don't want to go to war with Iran. Netanyahu's like, no, you promised. You have to protect us. We give you guys all this money. No, bitch, we give you all this money. What did you do? Bring your tapes to blackmail the rest of our country? We're kind of over it. We know everyone's a piece of shit. Let us heal. I have nothing against the people. I have everything against their government trying to get all up in our business. But guess what? So did they, because right before October 7th, they were in the streets protesting, trying to get Netanyahu out because they didn't like him. They thought he was corrupt. And then October 7th happened. And you will never convince me that October 7th happened the way they said it happened. Nancy Guthrie, the case, it's on day 13 now. All right. They're finding a bunch of gloves. So now they're doing gloves. They're like testing gloves in the house. I find this to be very bizarre. Some of the stuff that they're doing now is showing amateur hour. It's amateur hour. I'm not surprised, because even though the FBI is involved, it is Kash Patel, and he's fucking worthless. There are a lot of things that are crazy about the Nancy Guthrie case, but the thing to me is they've had a ransom letter, demanded money. They didn't pay. Then they said they would pay the $6 million in crypto. Crypto did just tank half its price, so it's like a 60 something now for Bitcoin, and it was at 110 just like 2 months ago. Anyway, they were probably like, ooh, probably shouldn't invest in crypto, but they said they would pay. Never heard anything. And then somebody said, look, I know who has her, but you got to give me one Bitcoin, one Bitcoin. And then the whole like trying to humanize them. I think that works when it's a child. I think pulling at heartstrings might work if it's a child, unless your child is a fucking hellion. And then that's just Franz Marecki. That's your fault for raising a little shithead. But okay, if they kidnap an old person, humanizing them is not the play. I just don't think that works nowadays. Like, people are messed up. I would be like, here's how you're going to play it. You're going to tell them that you know who they are and that you're going to find them and their family, and then you're going to kidnap their family in exchange. Like, fucking let's go. Let's go tit for tat, bro. But that's probably why I'm not a hostage negotiator, because I would hunt down your whole family. Anyway, it's Friday the 13th, and I'm feeling spicy today, so stay tuned.
So, yeah, last one, she's thinking about Nancy's or little mom. Oh, hold on. See here. All right, what we got here?
Guthrie's mom's missing case and bring a slightly different perspective. Just
one more 10-minute
some additional points I've noticed that caught my eye. I spent my career at the CIA and NSA and advised other intelligence agencies. I now have my own corporate intelligence firm. All these opinions are my own for entertainment purposes only. All right. I'll put the timeline here so you all can read it, but some interesting things about the timeline. The garage door was open and didn't close for a few minutes later. She could have been saying bye. There are multiple reasons for that. I want to talk about the Nancy Guthrie, Savannah Guthrie's mom's missing case and a slightly different perspective. Just some additional points I've noticed that caught my eye. I spent my career at the CIA and NSA and advised other intelligence agencies. I now have my own corporate intelligence firm. All these opinions are my own for entertainment purposes only. All right. I'll put the timeline here so you all can read it, but some interesting things about the timeline. The garage door was open and didn't close for a few minutes later. She could have been saying bye. There are multiple reasons for that. I want to talk about the Nancy Guthrie, Savannah Guthrie's mom's missing case and bring a slightly different perspective. Just some additional points I've noticed that caught my eye. I spent my career at the CIA and NSA and advised other intelligence agencies. I now have my own corporate intelligence firm. All these opinions are my own for entertainment purposes only. All right. I'll put the timeline here so you all can read it, but some interesting things about the timeline. The garage door was open and didn't close for a few minutes later. She could have been saying bye. There are multiple reasons for that. I want to talk about the Nancy Guthrie, Savannah Guthrie's mom's missing case and bring a slightly different perspective. Just some additional points I've noticed that caught my eye. I spent my career at the CIA and NSA and advised other intelligence agencies. I now have my own corporate intelligence firm. All these opinions are my own for entertainment purposes only. All right. I'll put the timeline here so you all can read it, but some interesting things about the timeline. The garage door was open and didn't close for a few minutes later. She could have been saying bye. There are multiple reasons for that. I want to talk about the Nancy Guthrie.
Okay, we had 4 good ones with her today. To finish off, update with Susan Collins. And tomorrow evening, about 4, 5, 6 in between there.
And we're back, y'all. Thank you for watching today. Go ahead and hit that like button, my people. You know that it helps us out a ton.
We haven't heard
and
enough
of course, it helps you because it helps us
time.
keep bringing you these stories every day. Now, y'all, your girl, Janet Mills, out of the great state of Maine. Do y'all remember last year when she had that confrontation with Donald Trump at the governor's meeting when they were sparring over allowing biological males to play in girls' sports? She went back and forth with Donald Trump, y'all. That's how she got on my radar, and she's been on my radar ever since. And it looks like her time in politics is coming to an end, y'all.
Democratic governors off the guest list from a meeting between state lawmakers and the White House. It's marking a break from a normally bipartisan tradition.
That's according to a new statement from the National Governors Association, saying this year the Trump administration will only invite Republican lawmakers to the annual White House governors meeting. The decision comes after Maine Governor Janet Mills was spotlighted at last year's meeting during a heated exchange with President Trump over the participation of transgender athletes in girls' sports.
Are you not going to comply with it?
I'm complying with state and federal laws. See you in court.
Every state. Good. I'll see you in court. I look forward to that.
White House officials defending the move. Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt telling ABC News that, quote, this is a White House event and the president can invite whomever he wants.
Things are just lining up terribly for your girl, including having a very stiff primary challenge by a guy named Graham Plattner. Looks like old Grammy boy might be about to take her out in the first round of the upcoming elections. That's on top of Maine's just crazy fraud situation, to the point where the government is saying it looks like Maine is the new Minnesota. And y'all, to top it all off, Susan Collins, who is Maine's current senator, Janet Mills wants to take her place, but Susan Collins just made a chess move that I think is going to seal the deal. She is backing the SAVE Act, which will require people to show ID in order to vote. For some reason, even though the vast majority of Americans from both political parties and even independents, we all agree, hey, yeah, y'all, we got to show ID for almost everything these days. But the Democratic Party leadership is coming out against it. And it looks like Susan Collins is going to be the 50th vote in order to get the SAVE Act passed. Y'all, we're going to cover all of that today. So yeah, y'all, looks like your girl. Looks like she's going down, y'all. Without further ado, let's go ahead and get into it. But before we do, y'all, you know that we are a paralegal school. If you've been watching our program now, you know that we've been around for 23 years. You know that we help people get going in the paralegal field. You know that we've helped hundreds of people since 2003 start their career in the paralegal field or even move up in their career. Our certificate is good nationwide, and our program comes with an
proper Medicaid payments or autism services going back for years. The report highlighted problems like billing errors and missing information, which Maine Republicans are labeling as fraud.
Because this money is lost to fraudsters. We're not getting it back. And when we have to repay even more to the federal government to pay them back for what has been stolen, that's more people that need it that are going to miss out.
This is way beyond the pale. The OIG report says nothing about fraud, nothing. It says that our state and other states are spending more money on the needs of some of our most needy children with autism. And I can sympathize with that. They do have needs, and we have increased reimbursement rates.
So there you see that Maine is still struggling for some reason, y'all, to get a hold of the fraud, to get it under control, to stop it. Y'all, there's so many more reports about fraud. The Maine Wire report about this fraud, this group home fraud, y'all, is quite disturbing. Take a look at this. A Maine Wire investigation has found widespread concern with another larger Maine Care program, Section 21, which is a program that provides residential care in two-person group homes for adults with autism, spectrum disorder, and other developmental disorders. An unnamed Section 21 group home was the location of an assault on a disabled resident earlier this month at the hands of a group home employee, according to media reports. Multiple law enforcement sources in Maine's more populated areas have told the Maine Wire about allegations of abuse, neglect, and even one instance of the worst type of assault, y'all. Looks like there may be yet another major fraud scandal and, unfortunately, an abuse scandal brewing in Maine under your girl, under her leadership. Which is just terrible.
Governor Mills commenting on U.S. Senator Susan Collins' announcement that she's running for a sixth term in Washington. Mills saying after almost 3 decades in the Senate, she doesn't think Collins serves the people of Maine well and has been part of an administration in Washington that has favored the 1%. Mills also noting that the senator has voted with President Trump's agenda 94% of the time.
We always talk about seniority. But seniority without backbone is nothing but tenure. And I don't think that's what the people of Maine need. They're tired of listening to her being concerned about this, concerned about that. When Alex Preddy was murdered on the streets of Minneapolis, Susan Collins said she was concerned. Most of us were outraged.
Governor Mills still has to get through a primary with political newcomer Graham Plattner and other Democrats. before she would face Collins.
So in order to even get to Susan Collins, Janet Mills has to get through old Graham Plattner. And that doesn't look like it's going to be easy, y'all. Here, the New Republic says in October, it seemed like the primary was over. Seemed like Graham Plattner was going to have problems because he has some Nazi tattoos on his body. But now it looks like old Plattner is on the ascendancy. Look at these polls, y'all. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 different polls. Six polls. You have Plattner plus 15, Plattner plus 20, Plattner plus 21, plus 34. And in just 2 of the 6, you have Mills up 5 and Mills up 10. So it looks like Plattner is going to probably defeat Mills. She might not even get to Susan Collins, y'all. So I am predicting right now, I think Janet Mills is going down. Of course, that's barring any type of unforeseen situation. You never know what's going to happen, particularly when you have candidates in their 70s. Anything can happen. But I think it's finally over for Janet Mills, y'all. I think that her time is run. I think she's an unpopular governess. And I also think that the Trump administration will probably do whatever they can do to make sure she gets defeated after that confrontation a year ago. So y'all let me know, what do you think about the SAVE Act? I will say this. I find it demeaning. I find it demeaning when you say, let's not require voter ID at the polls because certain groups, certain racial groups can't get an ID. I mean, I don't understand how anybody can take that type of argumentation seriously. Hey, there's whole groups of people who just can't get an ID. What? Is that protecting us? You're saying you're protecting us by saying we can't get an ID? That reminds me of when Kamala Harris said, Black people don't have computers. It's like, what? I mean, that's what? So anyway, that's how I see it. Y'all go out, get your ID. I do think there will be problems. I think.
So that guy does good videos on YouTube. It's all right. All right, everybody. Another long show. So everybody have a good rest of Saturday, Valentine's night, and tomorrow evening sometime, like I said, 4, 5, 6, unless something breaks. If there's any big updates on anything. Thanks, Carol, Lucy, Kay, Tim, and Paul, and Flying Eagle. And the new people in chat, thanks for coming in. God bless everybody. Love all. Remember, please hit the like and make sure you go to the description and sub to the backup channels. Thank you, and stay safe, stay strong, and keep the faith and never give up. So I don't know. Chico do another night of intel. We'll see you all tomorrow, if not sooner.